Chapter 406 Lifespan Samsara. The proclamation of the mortal world God startled all living beings under heaven, but the reaction within the supreme sect was minor. This kind of proclamation had occurred several times before, and given that the Taitsong continent hadn't been impacted by the chaos that plagued the greater world, the majority of cultivators who heard the mortal world God's words were merely curious and did not believe. The beings of Taitsong continent had their own faith, and that was in Sword Venerable Fudao. Could the mortal world God possibly be as formidable as Sword Venerable Fudao? Shunjun also expressed such sentiment, looking down on the mortal world God. I've drawn him, and I've drawn the divine skills of Sword Venerable Fudao, and I truly feel that Sword Venerable Fudao is stronger, Shunjun earnestly said. Guan helplessly said, regardless, the fact that he can shout to the whole world means his cultivation level is beyond our imagination. We should discuss this less. Shunjun glared at Guan and said, look at how timid you are. What's there to be afraid of? Would he dare to come to Sword Venerable Fudao's territory? Sword Venerable Fudao only protects all living beings. He doesn't intervene in personal grievances. That depends on the cultivation level of the visitor. With an existence like the mortal world God, it's impossible that he came for just any individual. Sword Venerable Fudao certainly won't give him a chance. You speak as if you understand Sword Venerable Fudao the best. Nonsense. I definitely understand him better than you do. Watching Shunjun's vehement demeanor, Guan realized he couldn't out-argue her. It seemed like no one understood Sword Venerable Fudao better than she did. Guan, not wishing to argue further, changed the subject and talked about other matters while his divine thought reached out to the mortal world God. The mortal world God had established a dojo on a straight and majestic mountain peak, and had taken 100 heaven and earth flying immortals as land immortals, seemingly preparing to promote the divine Tao. These 100 heaven and earth flying immortals came from different sects, each sought out by the mortal world God. It is worth mentioning that Baizia of Mortal World Peak was also among them. If not for Baizia's invitation, Guan would not have joined Mortal World Peak, but since demonstrating his superior strength, their relationship had become distant, with Baizia intentionally keeping his distance. Guan didn't know his state of mind. All he could do was to oblige him. Being a land immortal under the mortal world God was in Baizia's view the greatest opportunity of his life. However, after Guan's deduction, this path was more perilous than fortunate, as the mortal world God was destined to confront the immortal dynasty. Nearly an hour later, Shunjun left. Guan then continued to deduce Baizia's destiny to enhance his own understanding of the way of cause and effect. Although the mortal world God's proclamation had no impact on the Taitsong continent, it sparked wild thoughts among the beings overseas, especially those who suffered greatly, who clung to it as if it were a life-saving straw, knelt to worship the heavens, and prayed for the mortal world God's divine protection. In the years that followed, the divine Tao of the mortal world God grew rapidly, and Guan could see his chi fortune soaring. Once the mortal world God's chi fortune reached a point where he could contend with the immortal dynasty, he would launch his attack. Time flowed gently, and 20 years swiftly passed. North Sea Mountain. Guan, donning a mask, casually sat on the eaves with his legs crossed. He pulled up his attribute panel to have a look. Name, Guan Lifespan, 725/3, 169, 008, 271. Physique. Mixed Yuan Refined Void Body. Cultivation Level. Taoist Hidden Immortal Realm Perfect. 3,169,000,000 years of lifespan. He wondered if it would suffice for breakthroughs. Guan thought cheerfully, suddenly feeling inspired to open a lifespan samsara. Through reincarnation evolution, he could also deepen his grasp on cause and effect and destiny. He hadn't used it in many years, always restraining himself. In recent years, he had been paying close attention to the mortal world God, able to sense the intense reincarnation cause and effect surrounding him, indicating that the mortal world God had experienced many cycles of reincarnation. This meant that for great cultivators, reincarnation was also a method of cultivation. Guin could also undergo reincarnation, and it would be risk-free at that. But upon thinking of Lu Qiuxian and Long Qing, Guin feared reflecting the reality. After much deliberation, he felt he was being too cautious. Regardless of how many variables arose, as long as he was growing stronger, that was what mattered. He shouldn't be weighed down by so many burdens. Even if he had descendants, how would that be an issue? If he met them, he would help. If he created karma, he would suppress it when necessary. And as for more formidable foes, no matter his choice, enemies on the path of immortal cultivation would keep emerging endlessly. Everything must prioritize the Tao. Bring it on. After persuading himself, the eyes beneath the mask grew excited. Start a game. You have spent 10 million years of lifespan to initiate a reincarnation evolution. Beginning connection to Tao rules. Searching for a world of reincarnation. You have the following options. Please choose one. 1. Great Heavenly Spirit Land. 2. Great Primordial Land. 3. Dark Heaven and Earth. Why are these the 3 options? Guin frowned, annoyed by the lack of refresh options, making him somewhat uncomfortable. The Great Primordial Land was where Lu Han had been. He too had completed the trial, ultimately being slain by the Black Profound Emperor in the River of Destiny. No need to mention the Dark Heaven and Earth, as it was where Chu Lu and Xiao Xingtian had been, both killed by the Black Profound Emperor. Both choices likely meant confronting the Black Profound Emperor again. Whenever Gu mentioned the Black Profound Emperor, he would bristle with annoyance. The Annihilation God Emperor had suppressed Long Zhan, and could at least be considered to have eradicated a scourge for all living beings. But what about the Black Profound Emperor? This bastard was motivated entirely by personal vendetta, and moreover, he was a higher realm bullying a lower one. No, he couldn't allow himself to become hostile towards him. He needed to treat him with indifference. Guin adjusted his mindset and turned his gaze to the first option. Great Heavenly Spirit Land. What would happen if he chose the Great Heavenly Spirit Land? In the Great Heavenly Spirit Land, he wouldn't panic. After all, there was no one in this great heaven and earth who could threaten him for the time being. Let's try it. You have chosen to reincarnate into the Great Heavenly Spirit Land. Given that the Tao rules of this land cannot conceal your talent, you will retain your ability to seize lifespans, but you won't be able to unlock stage-based functions. Reincarnation evolution begins. In the first year, you were born into a Yin clan tribe in the desolate ancient continent, and you were named Extreme by your father. At age 3, you crushed a rabbit to death, seizing 6 years of its lifespan. But destiny reached a turning point. At age 7, your chi blood reached the level of a wilderness beast, and you were proclaimed the number 1 divine son of the tribe. At age 12, you defeated all challengers within the Yin clan tribe, becoming the champion warrior crowned by the Yin ancestors. Looking at the prompts before him, Gu An's expression became strange. Tribes? Yin clan? He calculated and realized that the Great Heavenly Spirit Land had no Yin clan tribe, which meant that this lifespan samsara was not set in his own time point. He continued reading. At age 15, an old man came to the Yin clan tribe, calling himself a land immortal, claiming knowledge of 5,000 years before and after. He saw through you at a glance and wanted to tell your fortune. Will you accept? Was this a necessary NPC encounter at the start of reincarnation evolution? Guin silently chose no. You refused his offer to tell your fortune. However, he didn't give up but insisted on doing so, resulting in your chi blood boiling in rage and you dying on the spot. At age 18, in pursuit of greater strength, you left the Yin clan tribe on your own. At age 20, you condensed your primordial spirit, gaining a might capable of shaking gods. At age 21, you encountered an injured dragon girl by the seashore, lying on death's door, begging for your help. Will you choose to save her? No, you chose not to save her. The dragon girl died of a broken heart upon your refusal. Her clan brother, the Azure Dragon, leapt out from the depths of the sea and upon seeing the scene, suspected you of killing the dragon girl. He attacked you, and after a fierce battle, you tore the Azure Dragon to shreds. Guin suddenly felt some regret. Why did rejecting to save her lead to even bigger trouble? At age 22, you faced a massive pursuit by an army of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, trapped on an island and cornered. Using your lifespan evolution ability, you enhanced your path of physical cultivation, and after days of fighting, you broke through the encirclement and condensed your mystic heart. Mystic Heart Realm, at 22 years old? Just how many creatures had this person killed? Guin couldn't see the specifics of each year, but judging by Extreme's growth rate, his killer instinct must have been tremendous. In the years that followed, Extreme was constantly haunted by the Dragon Palace from where the Dragon Girl had come. He battled ferociously, slaying dragons and demons, with astonishing progress each year that left Guin both thrilled and terrified. Strength can be brittle. It wasn't until he was 40 that Guin finally saw a chance to make a choice. At age 40, having stepped into the immortal path, you stormed into the astonishing Dragon Palace and slaughtered widely. Carrying the severed head of the Dragon Crown Prince, you confronted the grievously wounded Dragon King who knelt before you begging for mercy. Will you choose to spare the Dragon King? To have come this far, it was natural to eliminate the roots as well. Moreover, the long-standing grudge between Extreme and the Dragon Palace wasn't his fault. How could he be blamed when the palace insisted on holding Extreme responsible for the Dragon Girl's death, leading to an ever-growing hatred? Guin chose no. You executed the Dragon King and started to cultivate and heal in the Dragon Palace. At age 50, you learned the strongest legacy of the Dragon Palace, the dragon's divine, heaven-reaching record. At age 51, you arrived at the Fallen Star continent and made the acquaintance of a cultivator who invited you to join Mortal World Peak. Do you choose to join Mortal World Peak? Finally, something familiar. Guin immediately chose to join. You joined Mortal World Peak, astonishing the high ranks of Mortal World Peak in the assessment, and the Peak Master sought to take you as a disciple. Do you choose to accept? Accept. You became a disciple of Bai Chi Dao, the Taoist Lord of Mortal World Peak, and started to focus on your cultivation. At age 60, Bai Chi Dao took you to a grand conference of all sects, representing Mortal World Peak in combat, constantly slaying powerful enemies, alarming various sects with your killer instinct. At age 61, you won first place in the grand conference and were conferred the title of Heaven-Killing Extreme Star by the Immortals. At age 62, you left Mortal World Peak on your own to temper yourself. Upon setting out to sea, you were ambushed and annihilated the enemy. At age 63, you stormed the Chi Si Cliffs, captured the mastermind behind the ambush, but the Chi Si Cliffs threatened you. If you dared to kill that person, they would be at endless war with you. Will you choose to stay your hand? The ruthless heaven-killing Extreme Star seemed even more powerful than Long John. The key was that his aggression was not unrestrained but targeted at his enemies. Guin felt that even if he stayed his hand, Chi Si Cliffs wouldn't let him go. What did endless war matter? Had it been any other situation, he might have capitulated, but Extreme had stormed the Chi Si Cliffs instead of sneaking in, suggesting he was capable of fighting his way out. No, ignoring the threats of Chi Si Cliffs, you crushed that person into a mist of blood. Chi Si Cliffs launched an onslaught against you. You didn't flee but chose to fight. After a bloody battle, you broke the morale of Chi Si Cliffs, with no one daring to challenge you again. You left the remains of the Chi Si Cliffs under the fearful gazes of its cultivators. Chapter 407. Battling Through Life. Dominating the ancient and modern times, how fierce. Guin admired the extreme performance he witnessed. He couldn't help but say that the manipulation of lifespan samsara had been pushed to the limit, accumulate lifespan crazily, evolve crazily, and even evolve during battles truly like a madman. Moreover, no matter the choices this person made, as long as anyone dared to make a move on him, he would show no mercy. Guin looked forward to seeing more of Extreme, just unsure if Extreme had existed in the past or was from the future. At the age of 65, your understanding of the divine skill's heavenly record has deepened, and your soul has transformed. At the age of 67, you broke into the cave of an ancient immortal, endured many hardships, and seized the inheritance of the ancient holy court. You have obtained the heavenly Tao inheritance and can claim the heavenly Tao destiny. Do you choose to accept it? Ancient holy court? These 4 words made Guan imagine many things. But the holy court had existed for countless years, and it still needed to be seen whether the holy court existed in the time and space where Extreme was. As for the heavenly Tao destiny, he could not accept it. No, you refuse to accept the heavenly Tao inheritance. You return the inheritance to its original place, waiting for the next fated person to arrive. At the age of 68, as you prepare to leave the ancient Immortal's cave, you suddenly encounter the spirit of a holy god from the ancient holy court. Seeing that you are fated, he wishes to pass on a divine skill to you. Do you choose to accept? Holy God? Guan's expression turned strange. He hesitated for a moment, then chose to accept. You accept the inheritance of Holy God Yang Jian, learning the heaven-extinguishing, Tao-annihilating 36 spear techniques. Yang Jian. Now Guan could completely confirm that Extreme existed in a far distant future. Holy God is a level of divine, thought true immortal. After reaching this realm and then dying, how many years later must it be? There's no such thing as a duplicate name, because the heaven-extinguishing, Tao-annihilating 36 spear techniques were taught to Yang Jian by divine exotic ghost king, stealing the 5 elements. And Guan had seen it. Does Yang Jian's death not mean that the holy court will also perish? As Guan pondered, notifications continued to pop up in front of him, quickly drawing his attention. After learning the heaven-extinguishing, Tao-annihilating 36 spear techniques, Extreme continued to battle across the world. In the next 50 years, he made a formidable name for himself on the Fallen Star continent, then proceeded to the next continent. Battles, slaughter, and exploring caves, that was Extreme's life. He remained unattached to any emotions, unlike his previous reincarnations, even if Guan helped him to refuse them. Extreme reached the free immortal realm by the age of 800, astonishingly radiant. At 1233 years old, you defeat the strongest contemporary of Daluo Heaven, understanding your own Taoist intent during the battle and creating the ultimate battle technique. At 1150 years old, you declare yourself the Extreme Saint, ancient and brilliant, and you begin closed-door cultivation. At 1,200 years old, you step into the river of time, journeying to the past seeking rivals. At 1,300 years old, you arrive in the post-ancient period and begin a new campaign. Journeying to the past, Guan felt odd inside. The subsequent experiences were still battles. Each time Guan had a choice, it was either threats or pleas from enemies asking Extreme for forgiveness. In the end, Extreme spent 200 years sweeping through the heavenly spirit, great heaven and earth of the post-ancient period, seizing the chief fortune of heaven and earth, and his cultivation level skyrocketed. However, he did not surpass the 9 heavens of Immortal path as he used his lifespan evolution to enhance his cultivation techniques and divine skills. Then, he stepped into the river of time again, heading for a more distant past. The Middle Ages, unparalleled and capturing the chief fortune of heaven and earth again. Continue through time. The Taoist period, still waging wars across the universe. During the Wilderness Ancient period and the Ancient period, Extreme maintained absolute dominance, killing his way into the most remote eras. He came to the Taichu period. At 3,236 years old, you encounter the senior disciple of the Taitsong sword sect. You initiate a battle, defeat your opponent decisively, and choose not to kill him, letting him go. At 3,237 years old, the sect master of the Taitsong sword sect descends, wishing to test his strength against you. Ultimately, he cannot withstand a punch from you, and the sect master of the Taitsong sword sect meets a crushing defeat. At 3,238 years old, a river formed from concentrated sword chi descends from the sky, blocking your path. An ancient founder of the Taitsong sword sect appears. His sword intent shakes the heavenly spirit, great heaven and earth, and you engage in a monumental battle. Ultimately, you scatter his sword intent using the ultimate battle technique. And as the battle takes a tragic turn and he is on the brink of death, you feel an unusual hesitation in your heart. Do you choose to save him? Taitsong's sword sect. The words Taitsong also made Gu An's heart waver. After a moment's thought, he decided to save him. You choose to save the founder of the Taitsong sword sect, Leah, sacrificing your own true yuan to successfully save Leah. After gaining a hint of battle intent from your ultimate battle technique, Leah inquires about your name as you bid him farewell, to which you reveal only the name Extreme. What a story. Leah. No wonder Gu and an Extreme hesitated. According to the prompts, Leah was already at the cultivation level of a free immortal. How many years later must that be? This cycle of lifespan projection has gone too far. Wait, would he perhaps slaughter his way to the era I'm in? Guan felt uneasy at the thought. His conquest continued, and within the primordial period, he met numerous free immortals, including Li Xiandao and Blood Prison Great Saint, all of whom he defeated. Li Xiandao even tried to win him over, offering his daughter in marriage, but his offer was rejected. Along this journey, the girl of heavenly pride also confessed her true feelings to him. Unfortunately, Guan had to refuse for him. Let him be a pure warrior and cultivator. At the age of 3,700 years, you defeated the most powerful LV-Cien of the era and seized the chief fortune of heaven and earth, elevating your ultimate battle technique to a new realm. At the age of 3,800 years, you returned to the River of Time, where you were attacked by a mysterious entity, severely injured, and flung back to your era. Mysterious entity? Gu Ain's heart tightened. Although he had caught up with Lu Han, to have died at just over 3,000 years old seemed far too regrettable. The following prompts were all about recovery. He hid on a deserted island to heal, a process that took a millennium. Guan felt that his lifespan must be immense, but couldn't understand why he refused the 9 heavens of a mortal path. Perhaps, although he appeared strong, he was actually cautious at heart, only undertaking actions he was certain of. Once he achieved the free immortal realm, he continued to fight, improving the power of his Taoist sorcery. His prowess within the free immortal realm had reached a stage where he could traverse ancient and modern times. Guan wondered how strong he was now, and whether he could compete with the free immortal realm's Guan. After the reincarnation evolution ended, he could use a lifespan simulation. Fighting himself? Guan found it intriguing and was filled with anticipation. In the years that followed, once he had healed, he began adventuring through the universe. From the prompts, it seemed like the universe at this time was vast with intricate powers, far more exciting than Gu An's current era. At the age of 5,306 years, you unexpectedly met the fairy of 9 Nether Underworld, Yuquan. You enjoyed each other's company, and she invited you to discuss Taoist ideas in the 9 Nether Underworld. Would you accept? 9 Nether Underworld? That sounded very dangerous. Guan chose no. You refused Yuquan, fairy's invitation, leaving her regretful. As you watched her leave, you erased the turmoil in your heart, dissolved the karma between you, and roamed the universe alone. At the age of 5,400 years, you enter the Kanglan immortal domain. You are attacked by a heavenly demon, slaying millions of them and earning the enmity of their entire race, but also the admiration of all beings in the Kanglan immortal domain. At the age of 5,402 years, you are titled the Immortal Domain Ward God by the Domain Master of the Kanglan immortal domain. At the age of 5,413 years, you enter an ancient forbidden land within the Kanglan immortal domain, where you are attacked by the spirits of the battle court. You annihilate all the spirits in the forbidden land, and you arrive at the Kanglan immortal king's Tao Palace. At the age of 5,414 years, you comprehend the Kanglan immortal technique, triggering the heavenly Tao immortal position examination. You defeat the immortals in the exam. Would you choose to accept the heavenly Tao immortal position? Heavenly Tao immortal position? It was unexpected that he also had a heritage similar to LVCN's. It was within expectations that he could progress through such a heritage. Gun immediately chose no. If the Immortals knew that he could seize lifespans, what then? You refuse to accept the heavenly Tao immortal position. The Immortals are furious, claiming you have offended the heavenly might. Within 100 years, they will definitely capture you. Absurd. Guin suddenly felt fortunate that he had not accepted the heritage examination before. If he had tried it, big trouble would have surely come his way. At the age of 5,480 years, you evolve through lifespan and condense a Tao fruit, becoming a Taoist hidden immortal. At the age of 5,485 years, a group of immortals descended into the universe, starting to hunt you down. You fought tens of thousands of immortals alone and struggled to cope. At the age of 5,486 years, you arrive at the edge of the universe and encounter the heavenly spirit God guarding the boundary gate. You are annihilated by a single strike of his axe. You have died and your path has extinguished. Reincarnation ends. As the last prompt fell, Guin vanished from the porch and moved to a deserted island on the ocean, swiftly activating a lifespan barrier. He sat in meditation, beginning to absorb the life memories of Ji. Although Ji had only lived for just over 5,000 years, his experiences were in no way inferior to those of Lu Han or Long Zhan, and perhaps even more splendid. Through Jis eyes, Guin saw the environment where the Yin clan tribe lived, with a broader heaven and earth and more abundant spiritual energy. The rabbits Ji killed in his childhood were as large as small hills. From a young age, Ji, who had exhibited exceptional strength, was the treasure of his entire tribe, dearly loved by everyone. Before he left the Yin clan tribe, he had never suffered any hardships, with everything going smoothly for him as he hunted year-round, accumulating a substantial lifespan. Afterward, Guin saw the desperately endangered dragon girl, extraordinarily beautiful with a pitiable look. If it were him, he might not be able to resist helping in such a situation. Yet the dealings of the Dragon Palace were overbearing, and no matter what, conflicts might be unavoidable. Jis grudges with the Dragon Palace lasted many years. Guin found that Ji was fighting almost every day, and with his speed, his lifespan growth was definitely fast. He was immersed in Jis memories. Through Jis actions and words, he could feel that Ji was different from his other past lives. Ji had an inherent arrogance that emanated from his bones, directed only against strong opponents. When facing the weak, he could show a gentle side. Guin also saw the spirit of Yang Jian. Although its disposition differed greatly from the Yang Jian Guin knew, it was indeed Yang Jian. And there was Liya. During the Taichu period, Liya, with his white hair and powerful presence, had almost reached the current Gu Ans Taitsong sword intent. Chapter 408, whose past life is stronger. Guin was immersed in the extreme memories, experiencing his heart-wrenching life. At the same time, Gu Ans' understanding of the ultimate battle technique deepened. Although it was called a combat skill, it was actually the way of extremes. He combined all his cultivation techniques, divine skills, and spells into the ultimate battle technique, forming a combat system unique to himself. Through this memory, Guin could confirm that the Taichu period was immeasurably distant from the present, perhaps impossible to measure in millions or tens of millions of years. Taichu period, ancient times, Middle Ages, Taoist period. Each period was separated by countless years, and in the Taichu period, one could still encounter Liya, Li Xiandao, and LV Xian, but in the later ancient times, their legends were no longer to be found. Yang Jian didn't even survive until the Taichu period. Guin thought of many things, but he didn't feel that the future was already set, nor did he worry about those friends who did not appear in the extremities of his life. Rather, he experienced the life of the extreme. In the same realm, the combat power of the extreme was incredibly fearsome. Apart from fighting, all his time was spent cultivating, and judging by the rapid strengthening of his ultimate battle technique, he had devoted most of his lifespan to it. After Guin inherited all the memories, he felt that the ultimate battle technique might be stronger than any method he currently possessed. Having reached the free, immortal realm, he did not become arrogant, but instead felt a strong unease, which was also why he chose to become stronger by battling through the River of Time. The River of Time was different from the River of Destiny. It allowed one to traverse the past and future. The reason for choosing the past was because the extreme felt that what was past had already gone, and he would not feel as much guilt when killing. In fact, the extreme did not kill indiscriminately, and even admired some opponents. Because he let many enemies go, his lifespan was not as long as Guin had anticipated. Both were belligerent, but the extreme led a life without shame, never killing innocents or those without enmity, at most leaving them to their fate. Thinking about the extreme's battles, Guin felt that in terms of combat talent, the extreme was stronger. He could even say that he had never seen a stronger being than the extreme. If the extreme hadn't been hunted by immortals, his potential would be unimaginable. After entering the Tao Fruit realm, the extreme's combat talent was clearly stronger. None of the 10,000 immortals he faced was of a lower realm than him, and each possessed outstanding divine skills. Every one of them brought a sense of pressure that surpassed any opponent he had faced in his earlier life. Yet even so, the extreme was able to break out of the encirclement of 10,000 enemies who were of a higher realm than himself. As for the heavenly spirit god he faced last, that guy was indeed terrifyingly powerful, decidedly many levels above the extreme. Guin opened his eyes, and instead of immediately returning to the North Sea Mountain, he had another idea. He wanted to fight with the extreme. Even though the extreme was him, he just wanted to spar with another self. The aura of the extreme was too strong. Even in death before the heavenly spirit god, he had not felt fear or dread. Just do it. Guin's mind stirred. Simulating a battle with the extreme will consume 1 million years of lifespan. Do you wish to continue? Continue. Guin's eyes hardened, and his consciousness plunged into the simulation. Both were Taoist hidden immortals, but Guin was still in the perfect realm. Guin liked battling lower realms from a higher one, but that didn't mean he had no demands for his own combat strength. The battle lasted for several ancient hours until night fell. Guin opened his eyes, his brow furrowed. He had actually lost. He couldn't beat the extreme. The combat power of the extreme's ultimate battle technique was simply too strong. No matter what combat skill he used, the extreme could find a way to counter it in an extremely short time. Guin felt somewhat depressed. He had never tried so hard, yet he still lost. Losing to himself was not a big deal, but it still irked him. He had to look into the ultimate battle technique later. Guin stood up, looking towards the North Sea Mountain, where he saw sage Xian Miao cultivating and not rushed by his disappearance. Seeing this, he decided to return to the Supreme Sect first. He vanished on the spot. 30 minutes later, Guin sat in the attic of the Third Medicine Valley, reviewing the previous fight, repeatedly reassessing, and looking for ways to defeat the extreme. His mana was a bit stronger than the extreme's, but clearly, the extreme had invested far more lifespan into the ultimate battle technique than he had in a Daoist sorcery. Moreover, the extreme's combat talent was truly exaggerated, the whole process filled with pressure and without any flaw. He sat from night until morning. Only when the sounds of disciples practicing came from outside the window did he finally wake up. He couldn't help but smile wryly. Was he really influenced by the extreme? Why did he care so much about winning and losing? Wasn't he pursuing the joy of high realms battling lower ones? If he ever reached the extremes period of the Tianyuan, it was unimaginable how terrifying he would be then, and the extreme wouldn't be worth mentioning in his eyes. Guin found that the reincarnation evolution absorbed character traits from the evolution. Fortunately, only the good ones. At least he had not inherited Long Zhan's brutality. I have a goal now, Guin silently thought. He wanted to comprehend the ultimate battle technique, and he also thought of Long Zhan's divine skill. Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation Dharma Aspect. This divine skill could condense the self of a past life to fight alongside oneself, perfectly fitting for lifespan samsara. Guin had realized that all his reincarnations were battle maniacs. The more numerous they became, the stronger the Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation Dharma aspect would grow. In a sense, the more times one reincarnated, the stronger the Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation Dharma aspect became. The Dharma aspect conjured by the Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation could retain the main Bodhisattva will, but lacked independent thought, only capable of battle, not of serving as doubles. Imagining the future, Guin raised his hand as myriad past lives stood behind him. How spectacular was that vision! The divine skills created by Long Zhan, like the ultimate battle technique, had immeasurable potential. Guin took a deep breath and ceased to dwell on the comparison of strengths and weaknesses with the polar extreme. Even if he failed, so be it, then he would just continue to grow stronger. It was precisely the right time to temper pride and complacency. Guin stood up, then went downstairs, ready to practice drills with his disciples. Just as he reached the bottom of the stairs, Ji Xiaoyu also came out, saying she wanted to join him in practice. He did not refuse. During the drill practice, Guin could feel Ji Xiaoyu observing him. After blending the polar extremes' life memories, there came about a certain change in Gu An's demeanor, one he couldn't completely revert to as it was before merging those memories. He wasn't afraid of Ji Xiaoyu seeing through him. After all, if he simply refused to admit it, what could she do? After the practice was over, Ji Xiaoyu invited Guin to her room, and he did not refuse. Once inside, they sat down opposite each other at the table. Ji Xiaoyu stared at Guin, saying, "You've acquired some aura of reincarnation about you. Where did you go yesterday?" Guin replied, "Off to save the world." "Why do you ask? Can you see who I was in my past life?" A mere reincarnation path emperor. Could he measure up to the polar extreme? Speaking of which, the polar extreme had once visited the yin-yang domain in later generations, sweeping through all the strong beings there, even compelling the yin-yang domain to erect an imperial stele in his honor. "I can't see through it. I suddenly suspect that you're just like me. We both may be reincarnations of some great power," Ji Xiaoyu said, her face unexpectedly breaking into a smile. Guin raised his eyebrows. "How could that be? I've not received memories of a past life. I haven't even dreamt anything." "That's because the karma of your reincarnation is still dormant, and your cultivation speed is too slow." Ji Xiaoyu laughed, but then suddenly remembered something and her brow furrowed again. If Guin was like her, didn't that mean their future was already destined? Both of them would eventually become just a memory for someone else, all their experiences belonging not to the ones who truly lived them, but to their original selves. At that thought, Ji Xiaoyu looked at Gu and with a different gleam in her eyes. At this moment, she sensed the force of destiny. Was it fate that led her to meet Guin? Seeing her spirits somewhat dampened, Guin changed the subject. "So, who do you think was stronger in our past lives? You or me?" Ji Xiaoyu's soul was that of the reincarnation path emperor, and they were one and the same. Even Gu and couldn't extricate her from the reincarnation path emperor's being. Without a soul and only having memories, she wouldn't be the real her. It was an unsolvable issue. Only time could soothe the regret. Of course, I was stronger. Judging from the karma of reincarnation, the number of my reincarnations far exceeds yours, and for beings of that realm, the number of reincarnations indicates the height of their Tao level. Ji Xiaoyu stated as matter-of-factly, prompting Gu and to want to laugh. The reincarnation path emperor hadn't even transcended the reincarnation tribulation. How could he be compared to Gu An's past life? Let alone outmatching the polar extreme and Long Zhan. It seemed doubtful that the reincarnation path emperor could even defeat Lu Han. The two of them continued to chat, and Ji Xiaoyu began to speak of the battle she had dreamed about, the epic battles of the reincarnation path emperor against formidable enemies, which excited Guin greatly. Of course, the emotion was feigned. He had to put on a show for Ji Xiaoyu. While chatting with Ji Xiaoyu, Guan was reflecting upon more. He thought about incorporating the polar extremes cultivation methods into his teachings for his disciples, which might make them stronger. He would start with an XIN. Nobody could possibly possess the polar extremes battle talent, but if an XIN could achieve a mere 1/10,000th of the polar extremes combat achievement, even she could sweep through her peers. Regrettably, the polar extremes life had not intersected with Enhao's, leaving the future of Enhao an unwritten story. As it stood, though Enhao could not compare to the polar extreme, both had different growing environments, and the future remained uncertain. Late at night, Hidden Spirit Palace. Guan was instructing the deep-sea dragon carp in cultivation. After shape-shifting, the deep-sea dragon carp, clad in white, looked even more feminine with her black hair neatly pinned up. He intended to reprimand the deep-sea dragon carp, but found her transformed appearance quite pleasing to the eye, so he held back the critique. The deep-sea dragon carp, receiving direct guidance from Guan, was very joyful, speaking even more tenderly than an Xian and Yilan, sometimes drawing Guan's gaze to linger. Once Guan finished instructing, he lay back in the chair to read. The deep-sea dragon carp, practicing her step technique beside him, inquired, "Master, I've been reading the book you gave me. Do you think I might have a chance to turn into a dragon someday?" She was named Longli because she carried the blood of ancient true dragons. Deep in her bones, she yearned for the stature of an ancient true dragon. Guan, flipping through the pages of Green Hero Travelogue, casually responded, "Keep cultivating well, and in the future, whatever you wish to do or become, you might have the chance." Hearing this, the deep-sea dragon carp felt greatly inspired and practiced the stepping path of age's step with even more diligence. Chapter 409. The darkest years above the vast ocean, clouds surged like a scene from an immortal realm, and a towering peak stood in the sea with immortal birds circling around. Atop the mountain shone a dazzling golden light from a gigantic golden mirror, spinning and sweeping beams of light in all directions. Below the golden mirror lay a spacious and bright dojo, paved with white jade. Tens of thousands sat in meditation, all from the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. The majority meditated with closed eyes, while a few looked towards the front where a majestic figure sat in meditation before the golden mirror, his presence alone stretching 100 yards high. Mortal world god, clad in a black Taoist robe, holding a horsetail whisk, his half-white hair bundled behind his head with jade pins, his face weathered as if worn by the ages, he emitted an immense and boundless aura of Taoist sorcery simply by sitting there. Mortal god, now that the world is in chaos, when will we, the followers of divine Tao, descend the mountain to save the world? An elder suddenly spoke out, prompting everyone to open their eyes and collectively gaze at the mortal world god. Even Bai Zia, from Mortal World Peak, opened his eyes to look. They had pledged allegiance to the mortal world god not merely to seek greater strength, but also to fulfill their own aspirations. In their eyes, both the immortal dynasty and the holy court were preoccupied with their own power, not prioritizing all living beings. Neither deserved to rule the great heavenly spirit land. They believed that salvation required a third-party force, and the divine Tao founded by mortal world God represented their hope. Before joining the divine Tao, they had experienced its formidable power, a force they believed to surpass the immortal path. With the chief fortune of divine Tao, their strength continued to grow. Though newly joined, many were already eager to take action. Without opening his eyes, the mortal world god responded slowly, "The time is not yet ripe. We aim to save the entire world, not merely a portion of beings. Acting now might accumulate virtue, but it won't shake the immortal dynasty or the holy court. Once we are strong enough, we will crush the immortal dynasty in one fell swoop, swallow the holy court, and quickly restore peace to the world, which will truly benefit all beings." Many nodded in agreement with his words. A female cultivator asked, "Mortal god, in your eyes, Is the threat from Shengtian greater? Or is it the Yangxian Emperor? The free immortal might not decide the fate of the world. After all, even the Yangxian Emperor couldn't breach the Holy Court. But they all knew that to crush the immortal dynasty and the Holy Court, they must defeat both the Yangxian Emperor and Shengtian. A monumental battle awaited the mortal world god. Upon hearing this, the mortal world god slowly opened his eyes. Peering into the distance with a profound look, he said meaningfully, "Besides those two, there are greater threats in this world, and not just one. It is a time of unprecedented chaos. The future changes of the world will far exceed your imaginations, and what you currently see are merely premonitions. The true calamity has yet to descend. Day and night confused, your sin and virtue mixed. Where immortals and mortals coexist, you will witness the darkest of times." Hearing the words of the mortal world god, the faces of the cultivators in the heaven and earth flying immortal realm changed drastically, and they began whispering among themselves. Baizia also furrowed his brows, his eyes filled with worry. What really awaited them in the future? 3 years later, in a forest, Guin sat on a tree reading, while blood-prisoned great saint lay beneath, watching an Xian cultivate with a curious look in his eyes. "Master, what exactly is she cultivating? It feels different from the previous cultivation techniques and divine skills, yet contains those mysteries." Blood-prisoned great saint couldn't help but look up and ask. Guin responded nonchalantly, "It is my Tao." Over the past 3 years, he had integrated the ultimate battle technique and infused his own enlightenment, which he was now beginning to teach to an Xian. However, even if the level of achievement in the ultimate battle technique was the same, the strength and combat style of Guin remained distinct. He had to admit that the original user was the most suited for the ultimate battle technique. With the same level of achievement, the original user could unleash greater power, which related to will and nature. Since the simulated battle 3 years ago, Guin hadn't simulated again, feeling that he was still not ready. It was good this way. Having another version of himself as a target made life more expectant. Tao. Blood-prisoned great saint pondered thoughtfully. The forest quickly fell silent. Blood-prisoned great saint was momentarily dazed as he looked up and saw an Xian had stopped. She was standing still, seemingly lost in thought. "Master, she..." Blood-prisoned great saint looked up and cautiously asked. Guin flipped through the pages of the book and replied, "She is merely embracing the path enlightenment. Pay it no mind." Path enlightenment? Blood-prisoned great saint was not the naive youth he once was. He understood what path enlightenment meant, an opportunity seldom encountered in life. He looked at an Xian with envy, filled with expectation. Indeed, following his master, experiencing path enlightenment, and changing one's essence were not difficult. Yang Jian was unfortunate not to continue staying on. Had his heart settled, his growth would have accelerated. That foolish boy was short-sighted, thinking he had learned all the skills his master had, not realizing that his master's Tao level was profound and immeasurable. Blood-prisoned great saint's gaze returned to an Xian and noticed a new aura about her. This presence instinctively made him wary. This girl is growing so fast, always smiling, but once she begins to cultivate, her aura is even stronger than Yang Jian's. Blood-prisoned great saint thought to himself, astonished. He tried to recall when an Xian had developed such an aura. He could not pinpoint the exact moment. He looked again towards Guin in the tree, his eyes full of admiration. If such a frail woman could be nurtured to this extent, how powerful could he become if properly trained? Blood-prisoned great saint silently vowed to become the strongest under Guin's command. Time swiftly passed. As dusk approached, an Xian suddenly woke up. Her eyes widened as she gasped for air, her forehead covered with cold sweat. Hey, what's wrong with you? Why does path enlightenment seem like you're having a nightmare?" Blood-prisoned great saint asked with a hint of jealousy in his tone. He wanted to experience path enlightenment too, just like that fat rat. He suspected that the rat's rapid growth was due to continuously embracing path enlightenment, even while sleeping. Ixian managed to calm herself, then turned to look at Guin and said, "Master, I just saw a figure." No sooner had she spoken than she froze. The invincible figure in her mind, overlaid with Gu and sitting on the tree. "What figure?" Guin casually asked without looking at Ixian. Ixian smiled and said, "Nothing, Master. Thank you for your teachings. Master, what is this miracle skill? It's so powerful." Guin did not hide anything and replied, "This is the ultimate battle technique. You must not mention it to anyone, including Hauer. Even if you use it, you must never reveal its name." "Why?" Ixian asked, puzzled. Blood Prison Great Saint was also curious. Guin, with an expressionless face, staring at the book in his hands, said, "Because this technique originated in the future, a distant future." Upon hearing this, both Ixian and Blood Prison Great Saint froze, their thoughts wandering into an endless reverie. Chapter 4, 10 Past Life Background in the Distant Future. Ixian and Blood Prison Great Saint were deeply shocked by Guin's words. They harbored no doubts, only boundless longing. How advanced must Guin's Dao level be to obtain Daoist sorcery from the future? Ixian let her imagination run wild for a moment before she couldn't help but ask, "Master, you can see the future. What is it like? How long into the future will I live?" Blood Prison Great Saint also looked toward Guin, eager to ask the same question. Who wouldn't be curious about their own future? Guin replied indifferently, "The future is not fixed. If you knew it, it would change." Upon hearing this, Ixian was not satisfied and pressed on, "Then, is our fate good or bad?" Guin glanced at her and said, "With me, could it be bad?" A smile blossomed on Nzin's face as she began to flatter Guin. Blood Prison Great Saint was also excited, secretly admiring Guin's way of speaking. He thought it supremely domineering and decided he needed to learn it as well. "Continue training. We'll return later." Guin continued reading, giving instructions aloofly. Elated, Ixian turned around and began to reflect on her previous enlightenment. Although training with ultimate battle techniques had slightly extended Nzin's maximum lifespan, it was not substantial. The lifespans of Ixian, Yilan, and Zhenqin were all increasing slowly. Guin could only try to get them to reach the Nirvana realm as soon as possible for a chance at a breakthrough. Currently, they primarily relied on the primordial reincarnation skill and Guin's elixirs to extend their lives. Guin was only reassured by their high cultivation spirit and their refusal to give up on training. As night fell, Guin descended from a tree and began to guide Nzin's cultivation. Only the next morning did they travel to Tianya Valley where, after gathering medicinal herbs, they returned to Mystic Valley. Regardless of what they were cultivating, harvesting medicinal herbs and accumulating lifespan were Guin's highest priorities. Nothing could delay this. Recently, Guin was contemplating another matter. Where should he break through next? He felt that breaking through in the silent destruction domain would sooner or later bring great trouble to the great heavenly spirit land. The thought of facing immortals still pressured Guin. A more distant place for the breakthrough was necessary. The universe was vast, after all, hiding other great heaven and earths. It might bring trouble to other lands, but sacrifices had to be made to preserve his own land. 2 years later, at the age of 730, Guin was visiting Yi Mansion within the subsect where he and Yi Lan sat listening to Zhenqin recount thrilling battles from years past. Energetic, she occasionally stepped on a stool, her emotions fluctuating with the dramatic shifts of the events. Guin was very supportive, not only listening intently, but also expressing various emotions. Yilan did not intervene. She watched Zhenqin boast to Guin with a smile. As the spring breeze swept through the courtyard, she felt nothing could be better than this day, having all the people she cared about around her. Wasn't this the luckiest thing in life? After Zhenqin finished, she sat down, hands on the table, and looked at Guin, asking, Master, is the divine Tao that's been widely discussed recently real or fake? The mortal world's deity speaks greatly, but for many years there hasn't been any real movement, just rampant rumors. The rumors of the divine Tao had reached the supreme sect. It was said that believing in the divine Tao could grant divine power and help one survive the upcoming darkest years. Quite miraculous indeed. Guan had also heard such statements in the Third Medicine Valley, but he hadn't taken them seriously. The future was becoming more chaotic, and the deity of mortal world's divine Tao was merely one part of the grand torrent of the world and hardly decisive in the future's direction. The deity's proclamations were loud, but essentially, he was just a pawn of the Holy Court. How could a pawn compare to the Holy Court? More free immortals would appear. During Gu An's previous breakthrough, 2 free immortals had sneaked into the reincarnation vortex, the purpose of which was still unclear. Who can really know what's true or false? But I've heard it's quite chaotic overseas. If the divine Tao can relieve suffering and difficulty, even if it's false, I'm willing to believe it's true, Guan responded, his words sincere. In his view, the might of an immortal wasn't key. Since one is deemed an immortal, they should prioritize aiding all living beings. Whether in his past or present life, stories about immortals were always about righteousness and great benevolence, signifying that the meaning of immortals wasn't merely human fantasy, but rather a notion once conveyed by the immortals themselves. Since it had been conveyed, that was the role these immortals granted themselves. Zhen Qi nodded and said, "Exactly, what difference is there between an immortal that doesn't help others and the immortal dynasty or a holy court?" The world certainly did not need another immortal dynasty or holy court. Yilan spoke up. "These matters are too distant for us. Why think too much about them? It might be better to contemplate how to achieve nirvana." Hearing this, Zhen Qi frowned slightly and asked, "Nirvana, is there really hope for us?" Despite already being a great cultivator of the void crossing realm, she still felt Nirvana realm was unattainably distant. She could hardly imagine how others had reached the Nirvana realm. Of course there is. If you keep hope alive, anything can be realized. "I believe you can do it," Guan said cheerfully. Both women had reached the void crossing realm, and a century ago, they had unleashed their cultivation levels, their maximum lifespans extending beyond 1,200 years. Yilan looked at Guan, her gaze falling on his forehead. Gu An's apparent cultivation level remained at the nascent soul realm, but both she and Zhen Qi knew he must be concealing a stronger cultivation level, especially since the primordial reincarnation skill was passed to them by Guan. Over the years, Gu An's bearing had grown increasingly strong, nothing about him indicating mediocrity. "Master, if you release your cultivation level, could you reach Nirvana realm in one go?" Zhen Qi asked curiously. Guan said, "Nirvana realm? You underestimate me. I could directly advance to the 9 heavens of Immortal Path." "Master, how many drinks have you had? Do you think I'm bragging? So, are you saying you're even more formidable than Yangxian Emperor? Let's say it's 50-50. What does that mean? That you have a 50% chance?" Zhen Qi burst into laughter at Gu An's jests and started boasting along with him. Yilan watched them amusedly, though she didn't think Guan was as powerful. After all, she had grown up with Guan and knew the beings of Immortal Path realms were ancient creatures thousands of years old. It was said that Yangxian Emperor had lived an indeterminate number of years, an evident age gap existing there. However, Yilan thought of Sword Venerable Fudao backing Guan. That old man probably did have a 50% chance against Yangxian Emperor. Gu An's bragging might also have been backed by inquiries to Sword Venerable Fudao getting such an answer. After a long chat, Guan saw that the conversation had run its course and rose to take leave. Yilan tried to keep him, but Guan, wishing to explore the subsect, politely refused. Guan left the mansion alone and then strolled around the city. Compared to Supreme Sect, the order in subsect seemed even more chaotic, with many stalls on the streets selling practical items. All disciples coming to subsect aim to train in the lands of demons. Many disciples bore wounds. As the world descended into chaos, numerous demon and ghostly creatures infiltrated Taitsong continent, coming for survival. Guan didn't stop them. Their arrival also helped the human race cultivators to grow stronger. Of course, it was more dangerous, but ultimately, everything depended on individual strength. Great demon creatures brought not only competitiveness, but also demon treasures, providing more resources for cultivators. The current Guan didn't hunt. Merely harvesting medicinal herbs sufficed to significantly increase his lifespan. As he walked, Guan saw someone. Zhang Shi, the entity bound by the causality of reincarnation, whose true self was a free immortal undergoing reincarnation tribulation. He was also well-versed about reincarnation path emperor, clearly no ordinary figure. Guan even suspected he might be the reincarnation of Saint Heaven. Guan approached and stopped Zhang Shi, hesitantly saying, "Brother Zhang?" Zhang Shi recognized Guan too. He was deeply impressed with the Valley Master who invented Go. He smiled, saying, "Daoist friend Gu, it's been a long time. I didn't expect you to remember me." Seeing that his cultivation and lifespan hadn't changed much, Guan warmly said, "Indeed, it's been a while. How about we find a pavilion and have a chat?" Zhang Shi didn't understand Guan's enthusiasm, given they had only exchanged a few words initially, but he didn't refuse. The two made their way to the inn, laughing and talking. 30 minutes later, Guan sat opposite Zhang Shi. Seeing the pleasantries were over, he picked up the wine jug, poured wine for Zhang Shi, and smilingly asked, "Daoist friend, why have you come to the subsect?" Zhang Shi answered, "I'm investigating an enemy who has concealed his identity and potentially hidden himself in Supreme Sect." Upon hearing this, Guan frowned and asked, "Do you need any help? You're not even asking about our enmity? What if I was the one at fault?" If that were the case, he wouldn't need to conceal his identity. Supreme Sect, as a sect of the righteous path, would assure justice if he joined them, Guan seriously stated. Zhang Shi shook his head with a wry smile, seemingly trusting Supreme Sect excessively. "Thank you for your kindness, but I can handle it myself. I mustn't trouble others or involve the innocent." While talking, Zhang Shi kept his eyes on Guan's forehead, asking, "Brother Gu, do you understand the golden Tao patterns on your forehead?" Guan touched his forehead and said, "A friend from the Immortal dynasty mentioned they were Tao patterns, something that forms with path enlightenment." Zhang Shi smiled. "Impressive that you know. These indeed are Tao patterns formed from path enlightenment, and not just any common enlightenment." He appraised Guan, pondering, "Your past life must have had a significant background." Guan, wide-eyed, asked in surprise, "My past life?" "That's right. Your past life definitely belonged to one of the top powers of heaven and earth. But who exactly? I can't see through yet," Zhang Shi said, his gaze on Guan deepening. "Gotcha." Guan frowned, asking, "Then what should I do? Does my reincarnation mean I have some sort of mission?" Shaking his head, Zhang Shi replied, "Don't think too much about it. Your task is simply to live this life with your heart, and knowing your past life is to help you live with more confidence." His fondness for Guan grew. Upon learning about his past life, Guan didn't boast about his greatness, but pondered the purpose of his reincarnation. Isn't that a form of enlightenment itself? Guan sighed in relief, smiling. "That's a relief. I'm used to living a peaceful life. Honestly, I'd be scared if suddenly burdened with some mission." Chapter 411. The Strongest Person. What do you want to do in this life? Zhang Shi looked curiously at Guan. He had gone through many reincarnations, in pursuit of a unique experience in each one, which left him somewhat lost in this life, unsure of what to strive for. He had been a savior, worshipped as an immortal by all beings, had played the role of a world-destroying demon king, and even lived as a mortal. With the increase in the number of his reincarnations, his confusion grew. This was why his original memories had awakened prematurely. He was searching for direction. Guan answered, "Tend to flowers, grow plants, chat, and play chess with friends and disciples daily. If I could live my whole life like this, I would be completely content." Zhang Shi asked in surprise. Then what is your pursuit in immortal cultivation? Upon hearing the question, Guan looked back at him with confusion and asked, Isn't the purpose of immortal cultivation to satisfy the life one desires? I already have what I want, so why should I pursue cultivation further? My cultivation now is not about becoming stronger, but about living longer to enjoy more of this kind of life. Zhang Shi's expression changed subtly as he pondered Gu An's words. Which is more important, life or cultivation? He knew all too well how difficult it was to attain longevity. Many people appeared to live for thousands of years, but they spent their entire lives desperately pursuing cultivation, and the total time of genuine happiness they experienced might not even surpass that of a mortal. At the same time, Guan offered him a new way of thinking. Reincarnation didn't necessarily require one to be a certain type of person. It could also be about experiencing life in different ways. Seeing Guan again, Zhang Shi felt that Guan possessed a transcendental quality, one that not even some free immortals had. This aura, combined with the philosophical impact of Gu An's ideas, suddenly elevated Gu An's image in Zhang Shi's heart. Zhang Shi's gaze towards Guan turned different, and he began to inquire about the joys in Gu An's life. Guan didn't hide anything and talked on and on. The topics were all everyday matters, but when recounted by him, they carried an unusual significance. Even the bickering between the Bull Demon King and the White Spirit Rat brought laughter to Zhang Shi. In the ensuing conversation, it was mostly Guan speaking and Zhang Shi listening intently. As Guan narrated, he also calculated Zhang Shi's karma. The more he interacted with Zhang Shi, the more he could deduce, allowing him to glimpse into Zhang Shi's past. He saw many scenes. Zhang Shi was unaware that Guan was deducing his fate. In fact, he was doing the same with Guan. After a while, when Guan finished speaking, Zhang Shi remarked, Meaning can be found in the ordinary life. No, everything that exists has meaning, and cultivation's pursuit of Taoist sorcery and nature should indeed be about experiencing all aspects of the world. Guan seized the opportunity to ask, You know about my past life, does that mean you have one too? After all, both of them were nascent soul realm cultivators. Zhang Shi nodded, Indeed, I also have a past life. A male cultivator at the neighboring table couldn't help but roll his eyes, winking at the female cultivator opposite him. Guan and Zhang Shi were bragging so impressively, it made everyone around increasingly curious to hear what else the two could boast about. Guan asked, Why do we reincarnate? According to what you've said, we must be very strong. Did we get injured? No, quite the opposite. We reincarnated to challenge even higher realms. It's the reincarnation tribulation. In those cycles, one forges their Tao, and upon full realization, one can transcend the 9 heavens of a mortal path, embarking on the true path of cultivation, Zhang Shi replied. He didn't lower his voice deliberately, nor did he fear others overhearing. Guan, intrigued, asked, How many times must one undergo the reincarnation tribulation? It varies from person to person. The reincarnation tribulation has no limit. I once met someone who was also undergoing it, but he seemed to have long surpassed the 9 heavens of a mortal path. Zhang Shi said this with a vision of a figure appearing before his eyes, his gaze revealing fascination. After hearing this, Guan was interested. Could it be that even those in the Tao fruit realm must still endure the reincarnation tribulations? Zhang Shi continued, Truthfully, the enemy I seek is also using the reincarnation tribulation to conceal his identity, probably to investigate Sword Venerable Fudao. At the mention of Sword Venerable Fudao, the surrounding disciples started to become restless. You can't be serious? That's way too audacious. Sword Venerable Fudao is not someone you can just call out. Ridiculous. Do you truly believe you've reached the 9 heavens of a mortal path? Ha ha, truly delusional. As the mockery from all around increased, Guan said with resignation, Shall we change our location to talk? Zhang Shi nodded. Guan rose to pay the bill and then left the inn with Zhang Shi, but the laughter inside the inn continued for a long time. The two walked on the bustling streets, continuing their discussion about the reincarnation tribulation. Guan was very curious about it, and Zhangshi didn't hide anything. The rules of the reincarnation tribulation are hard to define. Sometimes you may go to the past, sometimes to the future, or even to other great heaven and earths. But one thing is certain, wherever you are, your reincarnated self will never meet your original self, as if bound by some cosmic law that restrains the cultivators within the reincarnation tribulation. Zhang Shi's face showed a look of nostalgia. Guan couldn't help but ask, what would happen if one reincarnation tribulationist met another? That depends on personal choice. Even if they fight to the death, it won't affect their reincarnation tribulation. However, I prefer to exchange knowledge with others like now. It's a pity that you haven't awakened the memories of your original self. Otherwise, we could share much more. Zhang Shi revealed a smile. He paused and then said, reincarnation is like this crowd, seemingly chaotic yet orderly, with a beginning and an end. Even if you meet along the way, ultimately everyone will reach their own destination. Then do you have memories of your past life? Of course, I'm the consciousness of my original self, only unable to wield the powers of the original. Upon hearing Zhang Shi's words, Guan feigned courage and asked, then may I ask you about that? I am afraid is not possible. It would bring you tremendous trouble. Zhang Shi immediately refused. Tremendous trouble? You couldn't possibly be from Shangtian, could you? Guan inwardly sneered, thinking even if it were Shangtian, he would not be daunted. Have you ever met anyone during your reincarnation tribulation who left a deep impression on you? Someone who is also undergoing the reincarnation tribulation. Guan shifted the subject and asked. That Zhang Shi was willing to converse so much was quite unexpected to Guan. He didn't think Zhang Shi was foolish. Clearly, Zhang Shi was confident, unafraid that speaking of these things could cause him trouble. Indeed, there have been such individuals from both the past and the future. Let me mention one from each. Zhang Shi mused. Neither stopped walking as they spoke, their figures seemingly on the verge of being swallowed by the sea of people. In the past, I encountered a being known as the Cold Emperor, born with immense chi fortune, as if all things under heaven and earth paved the road for him. When I met him, he had already become the supreme under heaven, which is unimaginable. A reincarnated body reaching the 9th level of the immortal path, he was just one step away from ending his reincarnation tribulation. When mentioning the Cold Emperor, Zhang Shi's face was full of respect. Guan asked, what do you mean by just one step? Did he fail? Correct, he failed. I watched him fall, eradicated by a powerful being beyond my understanding. I too received a warning from that being, with eyes that seemed to peer into the universe. Zhang Shi's face showed a hint of fear. Guan thought of the mysterious giant eye he saw in the depths of the universe during his breakthrough. Could it be the same entity? Guan couldn't help but think of the heavenly spirit god, suspected to be synonymous with the eyes. At present, the heavenly spirit god is definitely the strongest being he knows of, residing at the edge of the universe, extremely formidable. During later reincarnation tribulations, I never saw that powerful being again. Perhaps it's because my reincarnated body wasn't strong enough. But in the future, I met another reincarnated body, even more unimaginable because he actually managed to traverse the river of time within the reincarnation. He came from a far distant future. We are not from the same epoch, but somehow we met. His spirit is absolutely the strongest I've ever seen. This spirit has nothing to do with cultivation level. It is a kind of will, as if no existence could ever crush his fighting spirit. Zhang Shi looked intensely, while Guan's expression became odd. Could it be Ji? Guan pondered carefully, but couldn't recall if Ji had ever met Zhang Shi. Who knows what Zhang Shi from the past looked like? What was his name? Guan couldn't help but ask. Zhang Shi smiled and said, he has but one character to his name, Ji. He defeated all the strong throughout every epoch in the great heavenly spirit land, pursuing battle throughout his life. Embarrassingly, I never got to fight him. He didn't even know me. I just watched from a distance as he faced the world's mightiest, even against the entire world, and he still won. I will never forget that sight. If there's truly a strongest being, I believe he could become the strongest. With his capabilities and fighting spirit, he is certain to transcend the 9 heavens of the immortal path and challenge even higher realms. Just as expected, Guan secretly felt triumphant. Ji was himself, impressing Zhang Shi within the reincarnation, a rather satisfying notion. He pressed on asking, "You have no idea about his ending?" "I don't." After single-handedly sweeping away all-powerful beings, he broke through the void and continued his journey. But as of now, his journey has not reached our epoch. Perhaps his original self was born in the future, so I'm quite looking forward to meeting him later and having a fair and square decisive battle, Zhang Shi said, clenching his fist with a gleam of fighting intent in his eyes, a stark contrast to his usual refined self. Guan really wanted to say you wouldn't stand a chance. Just then, a voice came from ahead. "Aren't you afraid of being backlashed by the reincarnation for revealing its secrets?" Guan looked over to see a monk approaching, his appearance handsome and dressed in a simple monk's robe. His gaze was sharp as knives, focusing intently on Zhang Shi. When Zhang Shi saw him, his expression did not change. Rather, he stared back at the monk and said, "If you are not afraid, why should I be?" They faced off without any display of aura, causing passers-by to look at them in confusion. Guan whispered, "Who is he?" "He couldn't be. He is the enemy I was looking for. He does not belong to the great heavenly spirit land. He comes from outer heaven," Zhang Shi replied. The monk then said, "We are all in the reincarnation. Why differentiate between inner heaven and outer heaven? Do you think you can stop me in reincarnation? Are you afraid of sword Venerable Fu Dao?" Zhang Shi stared at the monk, asking with a cold voice. Chapter 412, Supreme Demon Realm, Apocalypse, Yu Chan, Divinity Transformation Realm. Third layer 762/1500/1600. Guan performed a lifespan detection on the monk, but unfortunately, he could not discern anything significant. However, he could sense that the monk named Yu Chan was connected to the heavenly demon through karma. Free immortals from the great heavenly spirit land could reincarnate into other great heaven and earths, so naturally there might be outsiders reincarnating here. Guan was curious about what grudge existed between Yu Chan and Zhang Shi. Currently, they didn't seem to be the two mysterious free immortals who had infiltrated the reincarnation vortex. Sword Venerable Fu Dao? What is there to fear? I have no feud with him. I didn't come here for him. Shouldn't free immortals avoid making enemies with one another so easily, right? While Yu Chan spoke, his gaze remained sharp. Zhang Shi responded, "Indeed, we shouldn't make enemies easily, but when encountering a Dao stealer, our Daoist paths differ and cannot conspire together." Although their cultivation levels were not high, as they spoke and looked at each other, Guan could feel the clash of their Daoist intents. Ultimately, the essence of their souls were that of free immortals. Reincarnation merely temporarily suppressed their power. Guan feigned a cough and said, "How about we talk somewhere else?" He could tell that neither Yu Chan nor Zhang Shi really wanted to fight. They were merely talking without engaging in combat, clearly wary of sword Venerable Fu Dao. Zhang Shi coldly said, "Let's go outside." Yu Chan's expression was also cold. He agreed, and both turned to leave. Just as Guan was about to follow, Zhang Shi turned back and said, "This is my grudge with him. You don't need to get involved." "No worries, we are all reincarnators. Let's speak kindly." Guan continued the conversation, then walked past Zhang Shi, catching up with Yu Chan, and started making small talk. Yu Chan was not someone incapable of communication. Faced with Guan's questions, he too would respond. Zhang Shi followed, frowning. After about half an incense stick's time, the three of them arrived at a forest outside the subsect. Zhang Shi and Yu Chan stood opposite each other with stern expressions, and in this place, they no longer restrained their murderous intent. Both having reincarnation bodies, it doesn't truly matter who dies. The hatred won't dissipate either. Why not sit down and talk, exchange insights? Guan suggested. Zhang Shi spoke. He and the force behind him cultivate by devouring heaven and earth, Taoist sorcery. Their stance is naturally opposed to ours. There's no need to talk. Yuchan looked at Guan, showing a smile, and asked, "May I know under what name does Taoist friend's true self go?" Free immortals, standing above all creatures and traveling the universe with ease, live for tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of years. They had likely heard of each other's names. No free immortal remained unknown. Sword Venerable Fudeo's true identity must also be renowned. At least that was what Yuchan thought. Upon hearing Zhang Shi's words, Guan pretended to be surprised and looked towards Yuchan, while Yuchan let out a cold laugh. In the daylight, his laughter was terrifying. The path of the great Tao is one of strife. Isn't the reason we possess spiritual wisdom to fight? This is the heavenly Tao, Yuchan said with a sneer, raising his right hand and summoning golden flames in his palm, within which he formed a small tower. Zhang Shi also raised his hand, with red dragon strength energy rising from his feet, encircling him, all heads of the dragons focusing on Yuchan. The wind in the forest also halted. Guan grew even more curious about the origins of the two. Zhang Shi seemed to be a person from great heavenly spirit land, but apparently had no ties with Holy Court or Immortal Dynasty, while Yuchan came from Silent Destruction Domain. A Tao Stealer seemed similar to the Battle Court, not exactly benevolent. Guan had no intention of intervening, for he had foreseen what would happen next between the two. Yuchan and Zhang Shi faced each other with escalating aura. After a while, Yuchan mocked. "It seems your reincarnation tribulation has reached a bottleneck." Zhang Shi maintained an expressionless face and said, "Seems you two have come with a certain mission and can't afford to die easily. Truly ridiculous. No courage to fight, yet making all this fuss." Yuchan followed up, "The beings in this realm have forgotten you. This is the era of Yangxian Emperor and Shengtian. Be at peace with your tribulation crossing. Pursue your own Tao. Why go against the heavenly trend? You know well the grand trends of the heavenly Tao." Zhang Shi calmly said, "Indeed, I can't manage too much, but don't even think about harming the beings of this land. With Sword Venerable Fudao here, would I be so foolish?" Yuchan answered dismissively, then looked toward Guan. "Taoist friend Gu, if you awaken the memory, consider joining us at the Supreme Demon Realm. I might even be able to secure a demon city for you." Supreme Demon Realm? So he was part of the same group as the Demon Shore. Guan, having eradicated the Demon Shore, was destined not to ally with the Supreme Demon Realm. However, in the Demon Shore's memories, the Supreme Demon Realm had already fragmented. How could Yuchan still try to recruit people under the name of the Supreme Demon Realm? Perhaps the force behind Yuchan wished to rebuild it? No wonder the future trends of the great heavenly spirit land became increasingly complex, involving many intricate karmic ties. Not to mention the Immortal Dynasty, Holy Court, there are also Heavenly Demon, Battle Court, and now the emergence of the Supreme Demon Realm. In this life, I merely seek peace. When I die, speak to my original self." Guan responded. Yuchan paused, then shook his head and laughed, finding Guan to be a peculiar individual. Zhang Shi also showed a smile, pleased that Guan had refused. Yuchan looked back at Zhang Shi and said, "Let it be. When the great calamity descends and heaven and earth reshuffle, if you haven't completed your reincarnation tribulation, you'll perish along with the great heavenly spirit land. Your time is running out." As soon as he finished speaking, Yuchan vanished on the spot. Zhang Shi, after hearing, muttered to himself, "Indeed, his target is the Holy Court." Guan couldn't help asking, what do his words mean, "will the great heavenly spirit land be destroyed?" Zhang Shi looked at him and said, "Because he has predicted the calamity of the great heavenly spirit land. This is an inevitable path of heavenly and earthly evolution, and also the time when the rules of heaven and earth are weakest. At that time, all beings in the great heavenly spirit land will be affected, and the free immortals undergoing reincarnation tribulation will return. If other free immortals from outer heaven descend, the heaven and earth could indeed be destroyed. Guan pressed further. How far off is that day? That is unknown. With those words, Zhangshi walked towards the forest. Guan asked, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to try out your life, but not in the Supreme Sect," Zhangshi said without turning back. Guan watched him leave, looking as the red dragon's strength energy dispersed from him. For ordinary people, reincarnation is an insurmountable chasm, yet for great cultivators, it seems to be a chance and fortune. After watching his figure disappear, Guan too turned and left. Late at night, Shenzhen was painting in her cave, holding a brush in her right hand and rolling up her sleeve with the left. Her beautiful face furrowed in frustration as if she had encountered a problem. Her right hand, holding the brush, trembled, never managing to make stroke. After struggling for a long while, she suddenly put down the brush, let out a long sigh, and seemed to relieve a burden. "Why can't I paint the city from my dreams?" Shenzhen muttered to herself. For some time now, she had found it difficult to paint the scenes she dreamt of or imagined, which distressed her greatly. "Because your Tao level is not high enough." A cold voice suddenly sounded, startling Shenzhen into looking up. A figure emerged from the wall of the cave, revealing itself to be Yuchan. Shenzhen straightened up, her expression cold, and asked in a stern voice, "Who are you?" "Intruding into another's cave is a grave offense." Yuchan surveyed Shenzhen and smiled. "It seems you haven't completely recovered your memory. However, you have her karmic aura. I can't be wrong. Since that's the case, it'll help you. I need your power, Demon Shore." He stepped towards Shenzhen. Shenzhen had never heard of the Demon Shore, but the intruder's actions were provocative in her eyes. A nascent soul realm, daring to trouble her? She immediately grabbed a wooden zither nearby and plucked the strings. The harsh sound of the zither resonated, and visible sound waves rushed towards Yuchan. His monk robes fluttered violently, his gaze sharpened, and he uttered one word, "Stop." A burst of golden light shot from his eyes, transforming into a golden stop character, striking Shenzhen at tremendous speed, immobilizing her. Shenzhen's eyes widened, filled with disbelief. She was of the void crossing realm, yet she had been easily immobilized. Yuchan's mouth curved up. "Your temperament is exactly like that of the Demon Shore, truly worthy of being the reincarnation body she chose." As he continued to approach, Shenzhen said sternly, "I am not the Demon Shore. Within the Supreme Sect, do you dare to mess around? Are you seeking death?" She was anxious in her heart, wondering why the great cultivators from the Third Medicine Valley hadn't yet arrived. Instead of thinking of Guan, her thoughts turned to the chess-loving great cultivators of the Third Medicine Valley, which was less than 200 miles from her cave. She had always believed her cave to be safe, never anticipating such an incident. "I did not mess around, and I will bestow a great opportunity upon the Supreme Sect." Yuchan smiled as he reached her, his right hand raised, about to grab Shenzhen's head. Her pupils trembled, panic overwhelming her. Suddenly, a hand pressed on her shoulder from behind, startling her, and her heart skipped a beat. She glanced back instinctively with her peripheral vision. The hand on her shoulder pulled her back, causing her to fall uncontrollably backward as she saw a figure. The man had an exceptionally handsome face, with lifelike golden patterns on his forehead. At that moment, Shenzhen thought she was seeing an immortal lord from the heavens. It was Guan. Shenzhen was dazed for a moment, then snapped back to reality. Guan pulled Shenzhen behind him, then looked at Yuchan. "Is it you? What are you trying to do?" Now, it was Yuchan's turn to frown. He completely hadn't seen how Guan had come in. This man was also a reincarnated free immortal. If he were to interfere, that would be unfortunate. The look Yuchan gave Guan was filled with chilliness, a stark contrast to his warmth from earlier this afternoon. Breaking into a female disciple's cave late at night is hardly the behavior of a monk, said Guan expressionlessly, his tone lacking the warmth of the afternoon. Yu-chan squinted his eyes and asked, "Do you know each other?" Shenzhen felt a warm flow from Gu N's palm into her shoulder, restoring her bodily freedom, which relaxed her. She quickly spoke. "Guin, this person's cultivation is not simple. We must be cautious." She was incredibly shocked. The sealing technique that she couldn't break free from, Guin had managed to unlock it easily. Chapter 413. Tower of Limitless Heaven and Earth. Hearing Shenzhen's words, Guin didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on Yu-chan, his expression indifferent to the extreme. Yu-chan could tell from his look that he was resolute. It seemed impossible to take Shenzhen away by bypassing him. Yu-chan sighed and said, "We were having such a pleasant conversation. I didn't expect you would still stand in my way. Well, if you could walk together with him, how could you possibly share the same path as me? I was foolish." He took a step back. Shenzhen was curious upon hearing this. Did these two know each other? And from the other's intention, he was trying to win over Guin. That was quite normal. Guin was strangely charismatic, able to make connections with all sorts of demons and spirits, even forming friendships with great cultivators that transcended age. However, she didn't know who this person was or why he wanted to win over Guin, lost in her wild guesses. Yu-chan lifted his right hand, and a golden flame surged in his palm. The small tower reappeared. The first glimpse of the small tower made Shenzhen feel a chilling dread. Danger! She instinctively looked at Guin and saw no fear on his face. Her own heart gradually settled down. Although she didn't understand the confidence underpinning Guin, she subconsciously believed in him. Guin's gaze also fell on the small tower, but before his eyes, another notification also appeared. Hostility from Yu-chan, once triggered, is deep-seated hatred, truly befitting of someone from a supreme demon realm. Guin sighed, "Why bother? Why bother?" Yu-chan seemed to have heard a great joke. The golden light burst forth from the small tower in his hand, and his expression became hideously fierce as he roared in a low voice. "Do you realize who you are?" Suddenly, Guin swung his sleeve, and a gust of wind rose from the ground, instantly dispersing Yu-chan's corporal body. Even his monk robe turned to ash. The golden small tower fell to the ground with a clear sound. The cave quickly fell into silence. Shenzhen seemed to have been struck by an immobilization technique, standing frozen in her spot, unable to snap out of it for a long time. "You have successfully seized 85 years of lifespan from Yu-chan, Divinity Transformation Realm, 3rd layer." Looking at the notification before him, Guin felt a pang of regret. Although a reincarnation of the free Immortal, this Bodhi's lifespan was pitifully short. Guin turned his head and looked at Shenzhen, asking with a smile, "Aren't you usually very brave? Fearless of the heavens, fearless of the earth. Why are you so frightened tonight? I really want to sketch this moment for you to see yourself." Shenzhen snapped back to reality and couldn't help asking, "What exactly is your cultivation level?" Guin slightly raised his chin, looking down upon her with a smile. "When you are strong enough, you will naturally know my cultivation level." Shenzhen wanted to keep talking, but the golden small tower suddenly emitted a burst of golden light, causing the environment in the cave to change abruptly. It was as if they had been transported to the starry sky of the universe, standing on a meteor. Shocked, Shenzhen turned around subconsciously and looked up. It was her first time in the universe, even though she had dreamt of such a scene before. Guin, on the other hand, was not surprised and calmly gazed into the depths of space. The golden small tower was rising, set deep in the universe. The windows of the tower opened and a golden flame gushed out like a stream, turning into an ocean, magical and unstoppable. When Shenzhen noticed this scene, the golden flame rapidly coalesced into a giant face, larger than both heaven and earth, looking down upon them. Yu-chan's face, but the aura was entirely different, especially his eyes, filled with a commanding brilliance, making it impossible to clearly see his pupils. In front of Yu-chan's colossal face, Gu-in and Shunjun were smaller than dust particles. This shock was greater than when the immortal Lord of Autumn Evening had appeared, because now she wasn't in the heavens or on earth, but situated in the boundless universe. Within this vast cosmos, Yu Chan's face still dominated her field of vision. How could she not feel overwhelmed? She subconsciously drew closer to Guin, grabbing the sleeve of his robe. Guin looked at her and smiled reassuringly. "What's there to fear? I am right beside you." Looking at his smile, Shunjun felt an indescribable mix of emotions: fear, despair, curiosity, and anticipation. "Who exactly are you?" Shunjun stared at Guin and asked. She wasn't foolish. She knew Guin was definitely not as simple as just a valley master from Medicine Valley. No wonder the sect leader always came running to him. Wait a minute. Could he be? A wild guess crossed Shunjun's mind, causing her to widen her eyes in astonishment. "You are not a reincarnation body." Yu Chan's voice rang out, filled with wariness. Guin looked back at him and laughed. "Your divine skills are not bad, mixing the false with the real, but can you escape my five-finger mountain?" As he spoke, he lifted his right hand. Yu Chan seemed to sense something. His eyes suddenly widened, a terrifying power welling up within them. Guin's right hand moved swiftly, as if he was grabbing at the starry sky. When he drew back his hand, his right fist clenched. The starry universe vanished accordingly, and Shunjun only felt a blur before her eyes. When her vision cleared, she was back in her own cave. Guin stretched languidly and said, "It's late at night. Time to sleep." He walked toward the entrance of the cave dwelling. Shunjun stepped forward and asked, "What's wrong with him? He won't come back again." "I hope only you and I know about what happened tonight." Guin left those words behind and disappeared around the corner of the tunnel. Shunjun stood in place, recalling what she had seen and heard earlier. She felt as if she were in a dream. "Have I soul transmigrated into another world?" Shunjun muttered to herself, then followed and sat down at the desk. She raised her hand and, with a wave, the wine pot flew over through the air, yet her hand trembled. Inside the third Medicine Valley, Guin sat in the loft, holding a golden miniature tower in his right hand. The commotion from Shunjun's cave dwelling had been deliberately isolated by him. Even the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor hadn't sensed any disturbances or anomalies. The divine thought true immortal was very strong, but in the eyes of a free immortal, it was nothing significant, and for the Taoist hidden immortal, even less different from a mortal spirit. Guin was using his divine thought to search for Yu Chan's soul, which was encapsulated within the tower itself. As he had guessed, Yu Chan and the entity behind him wanted to rebuild the supreme demon realm. He had invited Demon Shore many times and been rejected, until hundreds of years ago when his reincarnation body sensed the karma of Demon Shore. He then saw hope to win over Demon Shore. Yu Chan's reincarnation tribulation was on its last step, which was why he could retain the memories of his past life. The closer to successful tribulation crossing, the more memories from past lives the reincarnation body retained. Zhang Shi was just one step away as well. Ji Xiaoyu probably had a bit more distance to cover. The more reincarnations there were, the stronger the control of the original being over the reincarnation body became. During the early stages of the reincarnation tribulation, it was like reincarnation. Until death, one couldn't recover the memories of past lives. The current Supreme Demon Realm was very strong, with more than 10 free immortals. Leading them was the Supreme Demon Emperor, with an unfathomably deep Tao level. Even Yu Chan did not know how extensive his cultivation level was. The Supreme Demon Realm had many targets, and the Great Heavenly Spirit Land was just one of them. They wandered deep within the silent destruction domain. Guin retracted his divine thought, and with a clench of his right hand, the golden sand drifted out from between his fingers, then turned into fly ash. This golden tiny tower was also an Immortal Path supreme treasure, built by Yu Chan over millions of years, stronger than the Immortal Path supreme treasures controlled by the Holy Court because it had never left its master. You have successfully seized the lifespan of the Sun and Moon, Netherworld Emperor, free Immortal Realm 9 layers. For 2,580,928 years. The prompt that popped up did not surprise Guin. It seemed the reincarnation tribulation allowed the original being's lifespan to temporarily pause, and crossing the reincarnation tribulation did not consume the lifespan of the original being. Guin was contemplating this when the golden sand in front of him reassembled into the golden tiny tower. This tower was named the Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower, capable of creating domains, much like the cosmic starscape that Guin and the other had previously entered. Within that domain, its master could suppress enemies, even create limitless illusions to stupefy them. Guin looked at the Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower with a smile, curling the corners of his mouth. He began to erase all karma within the Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower, a difficult task for a free immortal, but trivial for the current him. The moon set and the sun rose. With the arrival of the early morning, not a single shred of karma from the supreme demon realm remained in the Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower. It was like a blank sheet, heavy with boundless power. Guin hung the palm-sized Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower on his belt alongside Qingtian Peak as another ornament. After finishing all this, he stood up and went downstairs to go through his exercises. Approaching noon, Shunjun came looking for Guin, just in time to see him playing chess with Long Qing. After going out to practice with Shun Xinzi for a while, Long Qing returned, studied even harder, and began delving into chess. Much like the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, he felt that there was a great Tao hidden in the black and white, and even his master Xinzi did not refute such a guess. Guin was using the Seven Stars mirror as a fan, gently waving it. Shunjun approached the crowd and saw him like this, dying to scold him. But then she thought of last night, and her feelings complicated once again. Faced with Guin's mysterious and terrifyingly powerful means, she felt an innate awe and could no longer regard him as she used to. Guin turned his head to look at Shunjun and threw her a challenging gaze. As if to say, "Dare to play a game?" Shunjun glared at Guin, muttering to herself, "How could I possibly win against you? No one else can beat you either." A breeze blew past, stirring the strands of hair by Shunjun's ears. She watched Guin quietly, feeling him to be so distant, unreachable through the ages, yet so real, like an illusory reflection in water. With an immense universe, she unexpectedly had such a great cultivator hidden by her side. She couldn't understand why Guin chose to conceal his cultivation level, but she began to review Guin's life, and looking back now, every move he made, every action seemed to hide a profound truth. What was his world like? Shunjun thought absent-mindedly. Leaves flew up behind her, rapidly turned yellow as they ascended to the sky, and ultimately fell to the ground, becoming part of Earth's greenery. Leaves grew and fell, year after year. 10 years had passed. In the deep autumn, Guin stood up, leaving the chessboard. The man he'd been playing with, a white-haired elder, agonized over the game board. Guin walked toward his loft, his gaze lifting to the sky. It's time for a breakthrough, he thought to himself, a smile involuntarily forming on his lips. What realm lay beyond that of the Taoist hidden immortal? He arrived at the front of the loft, just as Ji Xiaoyu was stepping out. "I have to leave Medicine Valley for a bit. They'll talk about it when I get back," Guin declared first, then hurried upstairs. Chapter 4:14 Reincarnation Tribulation Crossing. Ji Xiaoyu stood in front of the attic, looking up at the window on the second floor. She was curious. Where was Guin going this time? She waited for a while, and Guin came downstairs again. She immediately stopped Guin and said, "First degree, you must spar with me when you return." Guin looked at her and nodded. "All right, I want to see the progress of your cultivation over the years." Seeing that he had agreed, Ji Xiaoyu finally smiled and shifted to the side. Guin raised his hand, ruffled her hair, and then quickly walked away. Ji Xiaoyu turned around, watching him leave. She raised her hand to touch her head, her thoughts drifting back to her childhood. It had been a long time since he had touched her head. Time really flies. Ji Xiaoyu murmured to herself, her tone revealing a sense of reluctance. On the other side, Gun arrived at Mystic Valley. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he went to observe the cultivation of enchanting and jiangshi. The master and disciple liked to cultivate in the woods. Now, jiangshi had nothing left to teach enchanting. They mostly discussed and helped each other with their cultivation. Seeing Gu An's arrival, the master and disciple were excited, which made Guan reflect. Had he been too indifferent toward them? Guan was already aware of their feelings. He just had been too lazy to teach them, and had decided to let them temper their own characters. Guan raised his right hand, and 5 secret books appeared, letting them each choose one. The master and disciple were not fools. They chose different secret books, specifically Heaven and Earth Primordial Skill and Taoist Gang Primal Energy. After encouraging them a few words, Guan turned and left. Holding the secret books, the master and disciple felt a surge of excitement. They looked at each other, both sensing a promising future. Cultivate well, do not disappoint, master. Also, don't think about leaving. Guarding Mystic Valley is our lifelong duty, Jiang Shi sternly advised. And Sheng Tian nodded. He felt the same way. In the future, he would only leave for revenge. Once the revenge was done, he would return to show his gratitude. Practicing under Sword Venerable Fu Dao for thousands of years wasn't much, as long as they could continue to live and cultivate under Fu Dao's guidance indefinitely. After leaving Mystic Valley, Guan walked towards a distance on foot, his gaze fixed on the reincarnation vortex in outer heaven. He decided to go into the reincarnation vortex to cultivate. He had previously sent an incarnation to infiltrate it. The reincarnation vortex wasn't another world. Aside from the dense reincarnation rules, it served more as a transmission channel, accessing countless realms. This was also why Xiaochuan had not reappeared since entering. He had been reborn in another realm. After many years of consideration, Guan still felt that breaking through in the silent destruction domain was too dangerous. Would the heavenly spirit god carry out a thorough search, if alarmed? Or perhaps invite more mysterious immortals? Though not sure from where the relentless immortals pursuing him hailed, Guan was full of apprehension regarding their backing forces and did not want to disturb them. As Guan reflected, he strolled forward leisurely as if touring beautiful mountains and waters, not walking quickly. An ancient hour later, Guan emerged from the great heavenly spirit land. Beneath his feet seemed to be an invisible staircase. He ascended step by step. Along the way, divine thought true immortals were engaged in a grand battle, the battlefield covering the sky. Yet Guan walked between the 2 divine thought true immortals, invisible to their senses. Their mana passed through Gu and without causing any harm or even encountering any obstruction. As Guan walked upward, he looked down upon the world. Above him was the cosmic starry sky, and from there, scenes of battle were visible everywhere in heaven and earth, making great heavenly spirit land seem like a grain of sand in a vast ocean, rendering no corner of this universe unblemished. The struggle between the immortal dynasty and the holy court seemed endless, continuing for countless years, with numerous sects and dynasties seizing this opportunity to wage war and plunder resources. Out of the mystical depths, a malicious energy enveloped the vast expanse of the heavenly spirit land. As Guan was about to approach the reincarnation vortex, he withdrew his gaze and looked up. The reincarnation vortex, transformed by the Yuanshu ancestor, had become stronger. A continuous stream of lost souls flew towards the reincarnation vortex, their spectral forms equally mysterious, invisible and untouchable to even living spirits. Guan did not stop, quickly stepping into the reincarnation vortex. Once inside the vortex, he found himself in darkness, unable to see the souls, only feeling the Taoist aura of causality, reincarnation, fate, and souls from all directions intertwining and complicating the rules of the Tao in this place. Having previously experienced this path through an avatar, Guin was not curious. He continued onward. After taking a long journey, Guin saw twinkling stars appear ahead, and with each step, the number of stars increased significantly. These stars represented different dimensions. Some are like the great heavenly spirit land, while others were from lower realms like those of the Blood Prison Great Saint and Lu Lingjun. Needing a vast amount of spiritual energy, Guin naturally headed for a great heaven and earth. Since the road was endless, he did not always make a choice, but upon seeing a great heaven and earth comparable to the heavenly spirit land, he walked directly towards it, quickening his pace. Soon, Guin emerged from the darkness and arrived in the cosmic starry sky. Stepping out of the vortex, his vision still lingered on the reincarnation causality, where he saw continuous souls flying towards the vast great heaven and earth ahead. As they barely approached the heavenly barrier of the great heaven and earth, the souls vanished into thin air. Reincarnation. This scene was quite beautiful. Such were Guin's thoughts as he turned and walked deeper into the void. This great heaven and earth was still enveloped by the silent destruction domain, but it was extremely far from the heavenly spirit land, and even with Guin's divine thoughts, he could not see the heavenly spirit land from here. It was as if he had come to another universe. Half an ancient hour later, Guin was meditating on a desolate continent drifting in the silent destruction domain, as vast as the Taitsong continent, but devoid of flora and fauna, everything appearing dead. He activated the lifespan barrier. He didn't strive to break through immediately, but rather gazed into the distance. Luck wasn't very good. He had just arrived and saw free immortals fighting. Guin was captivated by their battle, watching intently. These two free immortals were not as strong as the divine cicada demon lord, but being free immortals, the commotion was huge, causing the Tao spiritual energy to surge immensely. After watching for a while, Guin turned his head towards another direction, his expression turning peculiar. He saw a skull that looked humanoid, floating in the depths of the darkness, observing the battle from afar, just like him. This skull exuded an ominous aura, something Guin had never felt before, not even during reincarnation evolution. What is this aura? Guin frowned, increasingly eager to understand it clearly. This aura made him want to destroy the other party immediately, an inexplicable hostility. Under Guin's gaze, the skull began to move forward, entering a strange state, and Guin deduced that the free immortals could no longer sense its presence. Was it planning to strike at the two free immortals? Chapter 415. Breakthrough to the perfect Xian Yuanzi Zai immortal realm. Guin watched as the skull moved forward. Because the distance was too far, he was unable to use lifespan detection and could only follow with his divine thought. The two free immortals continued their fierce battle, not sensing the greater danger that was approaching. Guin could feel that the skull had not reached the perfect realm of the Taoist hidden immortal, yet it was even more dangerous than a free immortal. He had no idea what kind of divine power it was using that made it undetectable to free immortals. Time continued to pass. Half an hour later, while the two free immortals were locked in a stalemate using their mana, the skull suddenly appeared, growing immensely large, and devoured both free immortals in one bite. Then, turning into a rainbow light, it vanished into the depths of darkness. The cosmic void fell silent afterward. The great battle seemed as if it had never occurred. Although surprised, Guin had no intention of pursuing the skull. It just so happened that its appearance coincided with his breakthrough, a noise that would allow the blame to fall on it. Guin pulled up his attribute panel. Name, Guin, lifespan, 740/3, 329, 223, 602, physique, Hun Yuan refined void body, cultivation level, perfect state of Taoist free immortal, 33 billion years of lifespan. Advancing one great realm was not difficult. A smile spread across Guin's face as he decided to start by enhancing his physique. He immediately invested 1 billion years of lifespan into his physique, and a steady stream of notifications appeared. Initially, he did not succeed in advancing. Without hesitation, Guin invested another billion years of lifespan, and the Hun Yuan refined void body successfully advanced to the Hun Yuan Taoist golden body. Tao's spiritual energy surged towards him, and the lifespan barrier's display of lifespan consumption began to change wildly. Closing his eyes, Guin delved into the transformation of the Hun Yuan Taoist golden body. Golden patterns on his forehead began to wrap around flames, and his skin started to shine with a golden light, his entire being exuding an indescribable divinity. The Hun Yuan Taoist golden body enabled his flesh to compare with the power of rules and be compatible with the Tao, allowing for a perfect embrace of all Tao rules. This meant that from here on, Guin could study any kind of Tao. Not only that, but the Hun Yuan Taoist golden body could also bring about a metamorphosis for his mana, with his soul receiving a tempering by the Tao. It was an incredibly wonderful process, devoid of any pain. The silent destruction domain also began to resonate with the changes as Tao's spiritual energy roared and Tao rules quaked, the area of influence expanding. Creatures hidden within the silent destruction domain emerged one after another, some frantically fleeing, others investigating the cause. In front of Guin, a black sea dragon with 9 dragon heads flew on clouds. The continent beneath Guin was only half the size of one dragon head. This was a landmass comparable to the Taitsong continent in size, indicating just how enormous the sea dragon was. None of the beings detected Guin's presence. The formidable strength of the lifespan barrier remained undetected by all. After half an hour had passed, Guin opened his eyes and began to invest his lifespan into the eternal infinite skill. 1 billion years of lifespan advanced the eternal infinite skill to the great Tao unlimited skill, achieving mastery realm. Another half an hour went by, and Guin started to upgrade his ability, the Tao representation divine thought skill, critical for hiding his cultivation level and needing to be upgraded in sync. Similarly, investing 1 billion years, the Tao representation divine thought skill was elevated to the great Thousand Xian void skill, reaching the realm of complete understanding and integration. Next, he worked on upgrading his stepping path of Age's Step and the ultimate path Formless Body. The stepping path of Age's Step was the only movement technique he was researching with combat significance, while the ultimate path Formless Body could prevent causal inference, hiding his true identity, both equally important. He invested 1 billion years of lifespan into each. The stepping path of Age's Step advanced to the eternal measuring heaven Tao Step, achieving mastery realm. The ultimate path Formless Body advanced to the formless and invisible freedom body, reaching the pinnacle of achievement. Once all his inheritances were complete, he checked his attribute panel and saw he still had over 27 billion years of lifespan left, with more than 80 million years already consumed by the lifespan barrier. He decided not to upgrade the divine skills and ultimate skills of his past life incarnations like Long Zhan and Lu Han, since these skills were the culmination of his past lives' achievements, of extremely high grade and rank, and he intended to comprehend his own path. After some thought, Guin invested another billion years of lifespan into the Taoist Gang primal energy, his protective technique, which should also aid in tribulation crossing. Eventually, the Taoist Gang primal energy advanced to the protecting Tao divine essence, achieving a realm of seamless proficiency. The silent destruction domain had descended into total chaos, with countless divine thoughts and divine senses sweeping through and numerous forces wandering about. Centered around Guin, entities were active in every direction. Even from the distant great heaven and earth, various creatures flew out to investigate the situation. The extraction of Tao spiritual energy was now affecting the heaven and earth rules of the great heaven and earth. Panic was spreading. After Guin completed the inheritance of the protecting Tao divine essence, he was clad in golden light with a white halo swirling around him. The white halo abruptly shrank and merged into his body, blending with the Hun Yuan Taoist golden body. It was as if a layer of flowing light spread over his skin, covering every inch of his body. His skin returned to its original state, but his demeanor now far surpassed what it had been before. He seemed like a supreme deity that commanded all things, his gaze indifferent, exuding a commanding presence that looked down upon all living beings. Guin pulled up his attribute panel and saw he had over 25 billion years of lifespan left. He began to compose himself. The next moment was of utmost importance. Breaking through the realm. 1 billion years underway. You have been practicing qi absorption cultivation for 5 million years, forcibly attempting to break through to the Xian Yuan Zizai Xian realm with the great accomplishment of the Great Tao unlimited skill, beginning your tribulation crossing, but you have not survived the mysterious reincarnation Great Heavenly Tao tribulation. Tribulation crossing has failed. You have been practicing qi absorption cultivation for 10 million years, forcibly attempting to break through to the Xian Yuan Zizai Xian realm with the great accomplishment of the Great Tao unlimited skill, beginning your tribulation crossing, but you have not survived the mysterious reincarnation Great Heavenly Tao tribulation. Tribulation crossing has failed. A tribulation crossing every 5 million years? That's quite harsh. The last time it was only once every 2 million years. Guin merely sighed inwardly, but in fact, he had long been mentally prepared. As long as the breakthrough succeeded, any amount of lifespan spent along the way was just a number. Ultimately, 100 million years of lifespan did not bring success. He had failed 20 times. He continued to invest his lifespan. 100 million after 100 million. Guin's expression remained unchanged, as if he was undisturbed by the waves. When 10 billion years had passed, and all had resulted in failure, he slightly opened his mouth. There was still 6 billion years of life span left. No need to panic. Guin continued to invest in increments of 100 million years, and his countenance grew more solemn because of it. After another 500 million years, the sixth 100 million year investment. Finally, Guin saw the notification text lengthen suddenly. You have been practicing qi absorption cultivation for 45 million years, forcibly attempting to break through to the Xian Yuan Zai Xian realm with the great accomplishment of the Great Tao unlimited skill, beginning your tribulation crossing, and you have survived the mysterious reincarnation Great Heavenly Tao tribulation. Tribulation crossing successful. Your cultivation level has broken through to the early stage of the Xian Yuan Zai Xian realm. You have been practicing qi absorption cultivation for 100 million years. Your cultivation level has increased. 55 million years could not advance even a minor grade and rank. Guin felt the Tao spiritual energy vibrate again and continued to invest lifespan, striving to reach the perfect realm in one breath. Finally, after spending more than 600 million years of lifespan, he broke through to the perfect realm of the Xian Yuan Zai Xian realm. Guin looked at the speed of lifespan depletion within the lifespan barrier, and his heart settled down. With the remaining 400 million years of lifespan, he should not be drained dry. He closed his eyes, immersing himself in the fortune he had cultivated for himself. From the distant void came the roaring flames of battle, where a great cultivator was fighting. The disturbances in the silent destruction domain had persisted for a while now, and various powers, unaware of the truth, were growing uneasy and began to suspect one another, leading to friction. The continent beneath Guin began to tremble as if it were about to shatter. As time went on, more figures joined the battle, and eventually 2 of them came above the continent to fight, each wielding a divine weapon like heavenly gods in combat, locked in fierce battle. They did not know that a terrifying existence surpassing the free immortal level was breaking through below them. Guin's Tao fruit began to evolve, adorned with Xian Yuan Dao patterns. The life-bound great divine power, the longevity true word born from the Tao fruit, also started to strengthen, merging more extensively with more Tao rules and heaven and earth rules, which allowed the scope and depth of the longevity true word to become broader and deeper. When Guan as cultivation level stepped into the realm of Xian Yuan Zizai Xian, endless memories surged into his mind, his past, his future, and even illusory alternative destinies. At the crossroads of life, each choice he could make would generate different lines of fate, and these lines would continue to branch out in the future. Only the path he truly took remained his reality. Though the others were illusory possibilities, with sufficient strength, they could also be realized. To make them real, one would need to create the same heaven and earth. The Xian Yuan Zizai Xian stage is a process of comprehending fate, being able to see all the possible destinies that one's former life could have generated, as well as the future directions of these destinies, thereby making one's future path firmer. The myriad states of all living beings ebb and flow. Guan saw the vision of the destruction of the great heavenly spirit land. That grand continent would be ground into dust at a certain moment. Not only the great heavenly spirit land, but all the great heavens and earths would move towards obliteration, just as living beings ultimately face a day of death. The destruction of the great heavenly spirit land was irreversible because this was a part of the heavenly Tao and the evolution of the great Tao. Unless Guan could transcend them, but if he could, the eternal and undying great heavenly spirit land might then bring variables to other cosmic lands. Guan saw that after he fiercely protected the great heavenly spirit land, the supreme sect and the Taizong dynasty became the rulers of heaven and earth, becoming the next holy court, the Immortal dynasty, ruling high above all living beings. They went to the outer heaven, plundering far and wide. In the end, they became the new hegemony, the enemy of all living beings. In the dim mystery of the cosmos, everything is predetermined, merely a cycle of new replacing the old. Cultivators can calculate heaven and earth the natural way, but the only thing they cannot fully predict is the human heart. Any person, any sentient being with spiritual wisdom could be a variable. One variable can generate countless others. Just as it says in the Tao Te Ching, the Tao produces the one produces two, the two produce three, the three produce all things. All events and all things are like this. Looking from the present is very much the same as looking from the future. Reaching the realm of Xian Tian Zizai, Xian means not only that the Tao fruit has become stronger, but it is also a pursuit of one's own position. Through this, Guan sorted out his Taoist heart. If he saw through fate, then how should he treat those who were closely related to him? Emotions tie him down, but should he allow himself to be constrained by emotions? The so-called following one's true nature. But what is this true nature? Living in the world, with each additional day, the true nature is influenced by other things, and emotions are also established over time. Chapter 416. Longer than heaven and earth, greater than the great Tao. Xian Yuan Zizai Xian. What is Xian Yuan, and what is to be free? Guan seemed to be surrounded by myriad scenes, violently clashing against his will at times, with images from the past, images from the future, growing more chaotic, more frenzied. He didn't know how much time had passed. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, his consciousness arriving in a vast and glittering starry sky, no longer surrounded by those intricate and tangled scenes. His world appeared to become quiet all at once. His eyes regained their clarity, and one by one, figures walked out from within him, standing before him and turning to face him. A total of 5 figures. They were Chu Lu, Xiao Shangtian, Longzhan, Lu Han, and Ji, his 5 reincarnated selves. Guan watched them, his eyes gradually firming. Behind these 5 reincarnated selves, in the depths of the starry sky, more figures emerged, their identities indiscernible to Guan, but he could sense they were also his reincarnated selves. Once he truly began to reincarnate, these selves would obtain their own identities. Their appearance signified that Guin had yet to sever his attachment to the cycle of reincarnation. Although they dressed differently, their figures resembled Guin. With each step they took, they flashed forward a great distance, rapidly closing in on him. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, their numbers surged, and soon, the starry sky before Guin was occupied by these countless figures, densely packed. Guin continued to sit cross-legged, gazing at his reincarnated selves before him, his expression unchanging. He was observing his reincarnated selves, and all his reincarnated selves were watching him, as if he were facing his true self. At this moment, Guin's Taoist heart gradually became enlightened. The original heart was not necessarily the true heart, nor were later gains necessarily obstacles. His current thoughts represented his true heart. Any moment he acted upon his own wishes was an expression of that heart. As long as his true heart did not conflict with his principles, it signified the right course of action for him. Even if the outcome of some matters was unfavorable, what of it? All he could pursue was his own life. At most, he could assist others, but he could not control their wills. Even if the outcome was destruction, wouldn't a period of pleasure before that destruction also count as a gain? Setting aside karma and fate, Guin needed to consider his own pursuits. Longevity? Too vacant. Through his cultivation so far, Guin increasingly understood the principle that the Tao is endless. How high must one's realm be to achieve longevity? If faced with a stronger being, could he maintain that longevity? Guin reviewed all his memories, including those of his reincarnations. His eyes gradually emitted brilliance. With a boom, the whole universe shattered, and Guin's consciousness returned to the present. He was still sitting cross-legged on the broken continent, protected by the lifespan barrier. Xian Yuan Zi Zai Xian Realm, early stage. The breakthrough was still ongoing. Guin's perception of the Tao became clearer. His comprehension of cause and effect, fate, and reincarnation deepened. These were mere transformations in the essence of his life. If one spoke of power, his mana far surpassed that of the Taoist hidden immortal realm. While the Tao's spiritual energy continued to flood his body, Guin began to probe this universe. His divine thought could see farther away. First, he saw a colossal gate deep in the universe, very similar to the land of extreme fall, where the heavenly spirit god who executed Ji was guarding such a gate. Boundary Gate. When executing Ji, the heavenly spirit god had mentioned the gate's name, adding that anyone who approached the boundary gate was defying the heavenly Tao and deserved to be utterly annihilated. Could every universe have a boundary gate? Guin saw that there was no one beneath the boundary gate, a silent and eerie void. Intuition told him that drawing near to the boundary gate would lead to trouble. He withdrew his gaze and looked in the direction of another great heaven and earth. His divine thought captured all creatures within it, even overhearing their interactions. This great heaven and earth was named the Great Vacuous Heaven and Earth and was home to 3 free immortals, also in a state of chaos. The disturbances in outer heaven had already caused unrest within the Great Vacuous Heaven and Earth. Factions of all kinds were striving to appease the creatures. Guin muttered an apology in his heart, but at that moment, he had no way to change his position and could only wait. He needed to advance. It was just unfortunate for the Great Vacuous Heaven and Earth. Suddenly hit by an idea, Guin lifted his right hand, and mana converged into seeds within his palm. He scattered them toward the Great Vacuous Heaven and Earth, where they disappeared in a thin air as soon as they were released. Consider this my recompense, thought Guin. As he acted, he looked again towards the Great Vacuous Heaven and Earth and saw changes in its future. The fate of the heaven and earth developed branches. Some branches dissipated, leaving others to extend, to grow and spread. Guin even saw that in the distant future, the Great Vacuous Heaven and Earth would collide with the Great Heavenly Spirit Land. Indeed, any variable could bring both fortune and calamity. Guin felt this way inside, but held no regrets. Even without him, the The great vacuous heaven and earth would eventually face variables. What are variables? They are forces that the rules of this heaven and earth cannot restrain. Anything from beyond this realm could become a variable. Time continued to flow. Gu'ain's mana soared, and he did not neglect the lifespan barrier. The digits representing his lifespan flickered rapidly, but the numbers did not decrease significantly. An hour later, Gu'ain's mana had finally soared to perfect completion within the Xian Yuan Zizai Immortal realm, leaving him with over 1 billion years of lifespan. He stood up, twisted his neck, his body shimmering with a golden light, enchanting and mysterious, the radiance of a mixed Yuan Taoist golden body. He then vanished on the spot, directly burrowing into the reincarnation vortex and then heading toward the great heavenly spirit land. With one step into the reincarnation vortex and another step out, and yet another step, he had already arrived near the supreme sect. This was none other than the eternal, measuring heaven Tao step. The vast expanse that lay between the great void heaven and earth and the great heavenly spirit land was immense, such a distant place that even for a free immortal, it was hard to reach, and even with the existence of the reincarnation vortex at present, how vast the reincarnation was. How many could find their way home in such a short time inside it? Gu'an inhaled the scent of flowers and grass in the mountains, and his face revealed a smile. This place still made him feel at ease. Now approaching noon, just a night had passed, and Gu'an had already surpassed the Taoist hidden immortal, reaching the higher Xian Yuan Zizai Immortal. And within the great heavenly spirit land, within this universe, he had yet to encounter the Taoist hidden immortal. Of course, the heavenly spirit god guarding the boundary gate did not count. Gu'an looked up and could already make out the figure of the heavenly spirit god. The fact that the heavenly spirit god could live to the utmost epoch was enough to prove his power. In the eyes of numerous cultivators, doesn't he represent immortality, eternal life? Gu'an did not take any more glances at the heavenly spirit god, for fear of being noticed by him. With his strength, confronting the heavenly spirit god was still very dangerous. Moreover, he had no enmity with the heavenly spirit god, so why provoke him? Within the great heavenly spirit land, he already had the confidence to deal with anything. There was only to be so cautious next, but he still had to keep one hand hidden. Gu'an could let people know he was the sword venerable Fu Dao, but he could not let them know how strong he really was. What he contested for was not the transient strength, but the future of countless eons. No matter how the world changed, how the sun, moon, and stars shifted, he wanted to witness all the changes forever. He intended to live longer than the great heaven and earth, longer than the great Tao itself. He aimed to become a symbol of eternity. He wanted to enjoy the solitude of immortality. Gu'an's lips curved upward, his right hand touching the passing flowers and grass. And after being brushed by his fingers, those flowers and plants all burst with vitality, slightly quivering as if about to become sentient. After another hour, Gu'an leisurely set foot into Mystic Valley. Inside the valley, there were disciples weeding, others sowing seeds, and some cultivating spells, resembling a small sect bustling with life. Seeing Gu'an return, the disciples immediately greeted him. After spending 30 minutes in Mystic Valley, Gu'an returned to the Third Medicine Valley. The Third Medicine Valley was now the center of his life. The place that Mystic Valley occupied his heart was no longer so important. As he arrived at the Third Medicine Valley, a figure appeared out of nowhere in front of Gu'an. It was Ji Xiaoyu. Ji Xiaoyu was about to speak when her gaze suddenly fixed. She stared at Gu'an, her brows furrowing. Gu'an was dressed the same as the day before, but there was a significant change in his demeanor that even made Ji Xiaoyu pause. "Shall we go to play chess to your abode or to the dojo?" Gu'an asked with a smile. The so-called dojo was the area for playing chess, where dozens of chess tables were set up. Every day, people would come to play. Ji Xiaoyu gathered her thoughts and said, "Let's go to the dojo. I've also been wanting to really feel life lately." Gu'an heard the implication in her words, but did not say much more. and immediately led her to the dojo. Last night, Ji Xiaoyu couldn't help but ask as she turned to look at Guan, full of confusion. Guan, looking forward, laughed and said, "I went to practice last night and had a bit of an epiphany. It seems you've had quite the realization." "That's right, you should see who I am," Guan said proudly, and Ji Xiaoyu felt like punching his smug smile. But as he laughed in such a way, she felt their relationship return to normal, with the distance she felt a moment ago completely vanished. Ji Xiaoyu studied Guan and said, "You wouldn't be hiding your cultivation level, would you?" Although Gu An's cultivation level had not increased, she thought carefully and realized that his aura was constantly changing, and this was definitely not an illusion. "You guessed it right. In fact, I'm very strong now. Even if your true form awakens, you might not be my match. Master Pewdie actually wrote about me." Guan glanced at her seriously. Ji Xiaoyu rolled her eyes at him. All of the dojo's chess tables were occupied, but when Guan arrived, 2 disciples voluntarily gave up their seats, and the cultivators playing chess had their eyes drawn to Guan. As Guan and Ji Xiaoyu sat down, a good number of people gathered around. The 9-Finger Divine Lord also arrived, looking at Guan with a strange expression. He likewise felt that Gu An's demeanor had changed dramatically. What was the story with this boy? Could he be related to Sword Venerable Fu Dao? The 9-Finger Divine Lord had always been baffled by how Gu An managed to win against him, and suddenly had a bold thought. Could it be that Sword Venerable Fu Dao was advising Gu An on his chess play? Maybe. Yes, that must be it. The 9-Finger Divine Lord's gaze toward Gu An was filled with anger. The boy had no sense of martial morality. Gu An let Ji Xiaoyu make the first move, and she did not hold back. After 7 moves, Gu An sensed that Ji Xiaoyu was mobilizing the power of the primordial Taoist talisman. She indeed came prepared. The 9-Finger Divine Lord, shocked, looked towards Ji Xiaoyu and marveled inwardly. What kind of power was this? Chapter 417. Why don't you just say you are the divine thought, true immortal? The primordial Taoist talisman continuously unleashed the power belonging to the Reincarnation Path Emperor, causing Ji Xiaoyu's divine sense to rapidly strengthen. Whether it was Ji Xiaoyu or the 9-Finger Divine Lord, both understood that the competition in Go was about the power of calculation. Precisely because of this, they felt unwilling to accept that Gu An, with his lower cultivation level, could continually win against them. The 9-Finger Divine Lord, sensing Ji Xiaoyu's aura quickly strengthening, secretly felt shocked. More and more great cultivators were attracted to the scene, and even Shin Xinzi and Long Qin came over. Gu An and Ji Xiaoyu played speedily, full of murderous intent, causing the surrounding people to hardly dare breathe. A figure appeared out of thin air beside Ji Xiaoyu. It was the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, who looked at the Go board, frowning, wanting to speak but stopping himself. And Xin and Yu Yingying also walked over, watching the Go match from within the crowd. Even those with lower cultivation levels could feel Ji Xiaoyu's increasingly strong momentum. Yu Yingying looked at Ji Xiaoyu, secretly surprised. Her curiosity about Ji Xiaoyu's background deepened. She had only heard that Ji Xiaoyu came from the Ji family. Ji Xiaoyu was definitely the most mysterious existence in the Third Medicine Valley. She was always in seclusion and only had a good relationship with Gu An. And Xin was equally curious about Ji Xiaoyu's strength. Knowing Ji Xiaoyu was powerful, and Gu An had said she had talent not inferior to Anhao. How could she not be curious? As Ji Xiaoyu's momentum continued to soar, thunderclouds surged over from the horizon, violently churning, darkening the sky rapidly, with the sound of thunder echoing. Disciples in the valley looked up one after another, abuzz with alarm, and even disciples from other cities of the Supreme Sect in Medicine Valley were drawn by the anomaly. What's going on? Is someone undergoing tribulation crossing? It seems the commotion comes from the dojo. Feel it carefully. There's a momentum that is quickly strengthening. Indeed, many people are running there. Shall we go have a look too? What's there to be afraid of? In the Supreme Sect, we wouldn't even fear if the sky fell. The valley disciples discussed among themselves, many rushing toward the dojo, wanting to see exactly what was happening. Holding a white stone, Guan looked at Ji Xiaoyu and asked, "Is it necessary to go to this extent?" Once the power of the primordial Taoist talismans was used too much, it would trigger expulsion by the reincarnation rules. Guan could see Ji Xiaoyu's lifespan was decreasing. Ji Xiaoyu lifted her eyes to look at him and said, "I must defeat you at least once to have no regrets. Fighting it out on the go board is pretty good." Guan stared at her and laughed. "Even so, I will not admit defeat. In my life, I've never truly lost, and if I ever lost, it could only be to myself." Unable to restrain himself, the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord spoke. "You really like to put on an act. Anyone who doesn't know might think you're Sword Venerable Fudao." Guan glanced at him and said, "How can a defeated dog bark so boldly? He'll crush you shortly." The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord's face turned red with anger, yet he didn't know how to retort. The other spectators found it amusing, but didn't dare to offend the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, looking at Gu An's play, had an increasingly odd expression. He didn't stop Ji Xiaoyu's thinking. For him, he served the Reincarnation Path Emperor, not Ji Xiaoyu. He couldn't wait for Ji Xiaoyu to recover into the Reincarnation Path Emperor. The two continued playing Go. Ji Xiaoyu's style was sharp and fierce, making frequent killing moves, but Guan always managed to counter them. The onlooking crowd secretly marveled. They too enjoyed Go and had their own studies, able to recognize the high level of Ji Xiaoyu's play, and each move's attack and strategy surprised them. Yet, despite that, Guan always managed to resolve Ji Xiaoyu's every aggressive move. His play was not as overpowering as Ji Xiaoyu's, but it gave off an undefeatable momentum. Boom! A clap of thunder resounded beneath the storm clouds, startling many. Looking at the Go board, Ji Xiaoyu's face was cold, her eyes filled with a compelling force, and the momentum of her moves continued to strengthen. In contrast, Guan looked composed, his speed of play neither hurried nor slow. Time quickly passed. As time went on, Ji Xiaoyu's moves became slower and slower. With the strengthening power of the primordial Taoist talisman, her calculation speed increased. However, no matter how much she sped up, she couldn't turn the tide of attack, and the pressure mounted with each move made, even giving her the feeling that she could not defeat Guan. Ji Xiaoyu lifted her eyes to Guan and saw the smile on his face, out of place compared to the furrowed brows and intense tension of the onlookers. The player seemed as calm as the gentle wind and clouds. The more confident he was, the less sure Ji Xiaoyu felt inside. Could it really be that she would be forced to reveal her true self? Ji Xiaoyu frowned, a shade of hesitation flickering in her eyes. Suddenly, Guan made his move, his voice clear. "Let's stop here, you've lost." Ji Xiaoyu's frown deepened, and as she was about to speak, Guan raised his hand and drew the Go containers toward him. Before Ji Xiaoyu could react, Guan waved his right hand, and the Go stones from both containers sprang out, black and white stones successively landing on the board. Everyone was taken aback, not understanding what he was doing. Ji Xiaoyu looked at the Go board, her expression rapidly changing. The expressions of the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord and the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor also turned odd. As the black and white stones continued to fall, with other stones rising, the path played by the black stones appeared no different from when Ji Xiaoyu personally played. After 10 breaths, no more stones fell, and the situation on the board was decided, with white winning. The others also realized. Had Guan simulated Ji Xiaoyu's play? They were all cultivators with extraordinary memories, unlike ordinary people, recalling the situation of the previous moves. The higher the cultivation level, the quicker their expressions changed. Their gazes toward Guan were filled with disbelief. Could he really calculate that? Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor had the highest cultivation level, and he covertly compared them. The Go strategy simulated by Ji Xiaoyu was very strong. If it were him, it wouldn't have been easy to win. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord looked at Guan, open his mouth, but ultimately, he couldn't utter a word. Guin looked toward Nine-Finger Divine Lord and asked with a smile, "Fancy a game?" Nine-Finger Divine Lord's expression turned serious. "Forget it. Another day, maybe. Today's game was very impressive. It gave me a lot to ponder. I need to comprehend it well." Guin laughed. This senior's tone was perfectly captured. He looked toward Ji Xiaoyu and asked with a smile, "What's the matter? Can't handle losing?" Ji Xiaoyu took a deep breath and turned to Guin. "I lost." The innate Taoist talisman within her began to stabilize, and her imposing aura dissipated. She stood up and walked to the side. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor took the chance to sit down. "Let's play a game." Guin looked at him and asked, "Do you even know how to play?" "How could I not? I've played here a few times before." Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor glared at Guin, annoyed, feeling that the kid was too arrogant. Ji Xiaoyu came to Guin's side, her eyes complex, wondering about something. Nine-Finger Divine Lord, having seen Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor once before, always thought him to have profound and unfathomable cultivation. He became interested, wanted to see if Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor could beat Gu, and faced with the challenge from Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, Guin naturally wouldn't refuse. The two quickly got down to the fight. The others continued to watch the battle. An hour later, Guin stood up, looking down at Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor under Ji Xiaoyu's shocked gaze. "Go is not as simple as you think." The surrounding disciples immediately cheered. They were unclear about Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's identity, but inside the Third Medicine Valley, they definitely supported Guin. Nine-Finger Divine Lord, Shun Xinzi, and several other immortal Dao great cultivators looked at the Go board, finding it hard to snap back to reality for a long time. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor trembled all over, his face full of disbelief. "How is this possible?" Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor muttered to himself, unable to believe that he lost. Seeing Guin turn around, he immediately stood up and asked sternly, "Stop right there. Who are you really? You're not Guin." When he said this, everyone followed suit in looking toward Guin, including Shun Xinzi and Nine-Finger Divine Lord. Longqing couldn't help but say, "What do you mean? Losing to my master and throwing a fit out of anger?" Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor stared intently at Guin's back. "My cultivation is above the immortal Dao fourth layer heaven. Do you think he can beat me just like that? The Go strategies I can calculate are beyond what a mortal spirit can imagine. Above immortal Dao fourth layer heaven? Above heaven and earth flying immortal?" Even Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Shun Xinzi were startled, their gazes at Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor turning to fear. Guin turned to the side, looking contemptuously at Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. "Immortal Dao fourth layer heaven? Why don't you just claim you're a divine, thought true immortal?" Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's face changed drastically, and Ji Xiaoyu's expression also shifted. She looked at Guin, feeling he was very unfamiliar. Guin stared at Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. "Since you're aware I'm stronger than you, how dare you speak to me like that while hiding in my residence?" His tone was indifferent, yet it exuded an immense pressure. The disciples discovered for the first time that their master could be this intimidating. However, they had never heard of divine thought true immortal. Even Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Shun Xinzi were pondering what realm divine thought true immortal was. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's face turned extremely ugly, his heart beating wildly as he faced Guin's gaze, feeling even more nervous than if he were causing trouble in the Holy Court. "You are," Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor said through gritted teeth, but the words "Sword Venerable Fu Dao" were impossible to pronounce. Guin turned around and said to Ji Xiaoyu with a smile, "Let's go back to the room to talk." Ji Xiaoyu nodded subconsciously and then followed him away. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor stood in place, staring as they left. The others exchanged glances, all filled with confusion. Longqing approached Shun Xinzi, asking in a low voice, "Master, what realm is divine thought true immortal?" Shinshinzi did not answer. He too wanted to know the answer to this question. Nevertheless, one thing was clear to him. Divine thought true immortal was above heaven and earth flying immortal, and Gun was most likely even stronger than a divine thought true immortal. Otherwise, how could he have frightened sun and moon netherworld emperor into such a state? And Xin was the only one not surprised, only excited. She too wanted to display her powers in front of others like her master had. Her motivation for immortal cultivation grew stronger, and she immediately turned and left to practice diligently. On the way to the loft, Ji Xiaoyu looked at Guan, her heart filled with 1,000 words to say. Have you awakened your memories from past life? Ji Xiaoyu couldn't help but ask. She had previously speculated that it could be a reincarnation of the free immortal, and now she was even more certain of this. Otherwise, how could Guan suppress Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor? As for whether Guan could be Sword Venerable Fu Dao, she didn't think it was likely. Sword Venerable Fu Dao had taken action more than once. Reincarnators who utilized their true form's power would be expelled by the reincarnation rules. Chapter 4:18. Invincible across the Supreme Sect, awoken past life memories? I suppose that's one way to put it. Guan turned to Ji Xiaoyu with a smile and answered, having indeed recalled many memories from his past life. Ji Xiaoyu, upon hearing this, had a complex look in her eyes. She could sense that Guan had chosen to end the chess game early because he feared she was expending too much vitality. As a result, Guan had also been forced to reveal his cultivation level. Her mood was a mix of various emotions. Surprise, astonishment, reluctance, concern, regret, and more swirled within her. Guan saw through her thoughts, raised his shoulders with a smile, and said, "Don't be dissatisfied. We can play chess again in the future, and you'll have more opportunities. I fear I may not have much time left," Ji Xiaoyu murmured in a low voice. Guan turned his head to look at her and asked, "So, what do you want to do with the remaining time?" Ji Xiaoyu was the Reincarnation Path Emperor, and the Reincarnation Path Emperor was Ji Xiaoyu. It was only the differing memories that caused her fleeting emotional turmoil. Guan could transfer the memories of this life of Ji Xiaoyu to another person, but that wouldn't separate Ji Xiaoyu from the Reincarnation Path Emperor, because there's only one soul. Moreover, memories and experiences can influence one's character, but one's true nature is determined at birth. Ji Xiaoyu understood this as well, so she never thought about breaking away from the Reincarnation Path Emperor. Her disquiet stemmed from her inability to imagine how what would return to her original self after this life ended, as she couldn't feel the emotions from her past life memories when recalling them. What do I want to do? Indeed, I need to give it some thought, Ji Xiaoyu mused. Guan offered no suggestions, letting her think for herself. The two returned to the house. While back in the dojo, the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor disappeared from sight, and the onlookers gathered to discuss the chess game that had just ended. Shinshinzi looked toward Guan's loft from a distance, took a deep breath, and said, "Your master is no ordinary person." Long Qing, who stood nearby, couldn't help but roll his eyes at the remark, as if I couldn't see it for myself. Long Qing's feelings were equally complicated. He was close to Guan, always regarding him as a father, but in his heart, Shinshinzi was stronger. To cultivate with Shinshinzi, he had spent a significant amount of time with him, which resulted in less and less time spent with Guan. Yet, the scene just now showed Guan's aura, even overpowering that mysterious great cultivator. That was someone even more formidable than Immortal Dao fourth layer heaven. Did this mean that Guan could be stronger than his master, Shinshinzi? Long Qing suddenly felt this to be absurd, even hard to accept. If this were true, why didn't he cultivate with Guan from the beginning? Long Qing's gaze shifted to an Xin who was walking away in the distance. Suddenly, he thought that an Xin might know something. He must ask, how could someone so close to him hide such a cultivation level? What did it all mean? The altercation between Guan and the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor became known in the days that followed, and the words divine thought true immortal remained in people's memories. 3 days later, LV Baitian and Jihan Tian came to find Guan. He received them, asking them to sit while he went to pour tea. Is it true that a being with a cultivation level above the immortal Tao fourth layer heaven has appeared in Medicine Valley, and that you managed to suppress them? LV Baitian couldn't help but ask, his expression tense. His first reaction to the news was disbelief, but when his subordinates claimed to have witnessed it, he had to take it seriously. Currently, the Supreme Sect did not have a great cultivator of the immortal Tao fourth layer heaven to rely on. Sword Venerable Fu Dao did not count, for no one knew his cultivation level. Now, not only had the heaven and earth flying immortal phenomenon occurred, but his most promising Gu In allegedly could suppress such an existence? Impossible. LV Baitian found the notion ludicrous, even suspecting that his own training had gone wrong, trapping him in an illusion realm. Ji Hanian's feelings were similar, with Ji Xiaoyu originating from a Ji family house servant. No matter what kind of fortuitous encounters Head had, it was impossible for him to be so powerful. Since you're already aware, why ask me? Guan responded casually. When he had attained the Xian Yuan Zizai Xian, he decided he no longer needed to disguise himself as before, as long as he did not reveal his true strength. Even the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court wouldn't suspect that Sword Venerable Fu Dao surpassed the Zizai Xian, and by 2 whole great realms at that. The strongest of them, Shantan, was still striving to reach the Taoist hidden immortal. Hearing Gu An's words, LV Baitian and Ji Hantian's eyes widened as they instinctively looked at each other. Jihan Tian signaled LV Baitian with a glance, and after hesitating for a moment, LV Baitian subtly nodded. Immediately after, Jihan Tian suddenly stood up and swung his palm towards Guan, who had his back to him. But as soon as he moved, he was immobilized, unable to take a step, and he couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Guan turned around, holding 2 cups of tea, and walked toward Jihan Tian. As their eyes met, Ji Hantians were filled with disbelief. As Guan approached him, he sensed an incredibly terrifying presence, as if Gu N's aura could crush him. If there's a next time, you'll die even if I don't lift a finger, Guan stated flatly, looking at Jihan Tian without emotion. Jihan Tian was drenched in cold sweat. LV Baitian hurriedly stood and said, "He only wanted to test you. He had no intention of harming you." He too was terrified, looking at Guan with fear in his eyes. With such momentum, it was absolutely an immortal Tao existence. Without any exaggeration, LV Baitian had never in his life felt such a powerful aura. As for the terrifying beings like Sword Venerable Fu Dao and Immortal Lord Xiao, their presence was directed towards heaven and earth, far from LV Baitian. This time, it was a face-to-face feeling. Guan retracted his aura and placed 2 cups of tea on the table. He sat down casually, then leaned back in the chair, looking at LV Baitian and the other person, asking, "Now that it's confirmed, what are you going to do next?" His tone was casual, and he didn't emit an overwhelming aura, but it paradoxically brought an almost suffocating pressure to LV Baitian and his companion. They had never imagined this young man could possess such spirit. At the same time, they pondered over Gu N's words, unable to determine his attitude. Was Guan hiding his strength, or did he not mind revealing it? Should they help Guan with the aftermath? Guan was not in a hurry, waiting for them to think. Seeing Guan not rushing them, the pressure on the 2 men increased, and they even began to sweat profusely on their foreheads. LV Baitian looked up at Guan, somewhat dazed. The Guan that he had tried to take care of and favored over the years turned out to be so powerful. He suddenly thought of something. Could it be that Guan was very strong from the beginning? The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Since he had met Guan, he had never seen him panic. The young man seemed to fear nothing, no matter how tough or treacherous the path. A pursuit of a simple life could be because he was strong enough to have seen the splendor of the world. Could he be Sword Venerable Fu Dao? Once this thought occurred to him, LV Batian startled himself. He looked at Guin, meeting Gu An's seemingly smiling gaze. LV Batian broke into a cold sweat as he thought about his actions over the years and the suggestions Guin had made. Many things finally clicked together. No wonder he said that he would never reach the unification realm in this lifetime. It turned out that he simply held the unification realm in contempt. Jihan Tian didn't think that much. He was just puzzled as to why Guin was so strong. After all, Guin was a house servant of the Ji family. Jihan Tian had investigated Guin early on and was certain of Gu An's true identity. Could it be that the current Gu and was not the same person he knew and had been replaced by a great cultivator? That was the only possibility. How could a junior of over 700 years old be so powerful? Even in Hao had not necessarily stepped into the Nirvana realm to this day. LV Batian took a deep breath and said, "Regarding your cultivation level, we won't disclose it and won't disturb your life." Jihan Tian came back to reality and quickly echoed him. No longer did he bear his usual haughtiness. In front of Guin, he appeared scared and apprehensive. Guin thought to himself that even if they had said something, it wouldn't matter, but the quietness was welcome. He spoke, "Drink the tea. This tea is a long-treasured favorite of mine." The two men nodded hastily, following up by picking up their tea, but their hands were trembling. 30 minutes later, the two men walked out of the attic, with Guin coming out to see them off. Long Qing, who was chatting with the Blood Prison Great Saint, turned his head to look and saw the sect leader and vice-sect leader bowing and scraping to his master, which caused him to frown. Guin watched as the two left and then turned to Long Qing with a smile. Without waiting for Long Qing to speak, he went straight back into his room and slammed the door shut with a bang. Long Qing opened his mouth, realizing that his master was intentionally avoiding him. It was understandable, remembering how he used to boast about how strong his second master was in front of his master made his face burn with embarrassment. Elsewhere, LV Batian and Jihan Tian were traveling on clouds, conversing in low voices. "What should we do from now on?" Jihan Tian asked, his expression complex. He truly didn't know what to do with Guin. They could no longer treat him as a subordinate, but given their past relationship, he felt awkward about trying to flatter Guin directly. LV Batian looked towards the horizon and replied, "Pretend as if we know nothing of this, and from now on, treat well those who have a good relationship with him. After all, he has worked diligently for the Supreme Sect, and those who are on good terms with him must also have made significant contributions to the Supreme Sect. The Supreme Sect cannot let them go unrewarded." After hearing this, Ji Handian's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but admire LV Batian. Indeed, there is a difference between the sect leader and the vice-sect leader. In the days that followed, the rumors about the Third Medicine Valley were suppressed, but in the hearts of the disciples in the valley, Guin had become a mysterious great cultivator. They worked even harder, hoping to gain Gu An's favor. Time flew by. During the autumn, Yilan and Jinqin came to find Guin. The two women climbed upstairs and entered the room. "Master," were now elders in the Hall of Elders of the subsect. Nowadays in the subsect were second only to one and above 10,000. Jinqin said excitedly. Although this had been decided for several months, every time she brought it up, she was ecstatic. Guin raised his eyebrows, surprised. "That impressive?" Yilan, on the other hand, stared at Guin and asked, "This must have something to do with you, right?" No matter how great our achievements are, with our cultivation levels as they are, it's nearly impossible to enter the Hall of Elders. Upon hearing this, Jinqin turned to look at Guin, thinking he would either be modest or deny it. Instead, Guin answered, "Perhaps someone wants to curry favor with me." At that, Jinqin's eyes widened, and she asked in astonishment, "Who could use 2 seats in the Hall of Elders to curry favor with you?" Guin proudly said, "I'll be honest with you, I'm very strong now. Without any exaggeration, I could defeat anyone in the Supreme Sect. From now on, you can walk sideways if you like." Chapter 419. The power of tens of millions of years for real. You think you can still beat Sword Venerable Fudao? Zhen Qin chuckled, teasingly responding to Gu An's claim. Guan raised his right fist and declared, "My punch carries the power of tens of thousands of years. Could Sword Venerable Fudao withstand it?" Tui tui tui. Don't talk nonsense. Be careful lest the old master hears you. Zhen Qin suddenly became anxious. After saying that, she stood up, bowed towards the window with her hands pressed together, apologizing on behalf of Gu and watched with a desire to laugh, but did not stop her, simply observing Zhen Qin's performance with amusement. Yilan, on the other hand, was not afraid. She had always felt that there was a connection between Gu and Sword Venerable Fudao. Gu An's words implied that his relationship with Sword Venerable Fudao was extremely good, so good that he could even joke with his superior. This made her quite happy. The better Gu An's relationship with Sword Venerable Fudao, the safer she would be in the days to come. After Zhen Qin apologized for quite some time, under Gu An's urging, she sat down again. Guan inquired about their experiences in the Hall of Elders, and the two women did not hide anything. When they first joined the Hall of Elders, they faced much ostracism, and some even publicly humiliated them. However, the next morning, those people came to visit and apologized. After that, the Hall of Elders changed its attitude towards them, treating them very well. Yilan took this opportunity to grow her influence, and to her surprise, rather than being suppressed, the Hall of Elders even paved the way for them. So, Yilan concluded that someone must be helping them from behind. After much consideration, the only person they could think of who was capable of doing this was Guan. In the Supreme Sect, there were numerous women with more outstanding looks and higher cultivation levels than them. None of the great cultivators on the Immortal path were interested in them, so it was easy to figure out the answer. From now on, perform your duties in the Elder seats without worry, and don't feel too much pressure. If you encounter something you can't solve, come to me. Guan spoke earnestly. This was something the old Im would never have said, not because he had become more powerful, but because Ji Xiaoyu's situation had made him realize that the time left for those around him was not long. He had billions of years, even more, of lifespan, but others were different. 100 years flew by in an instant. And how many centuries could a person live? In times of great chaos, it was possible that while he was distracted, the people he cared about might be enduring hardship. Why not be more open-hearted? Yilan responded, "Don't worry, we'll come to you." Zhen Qin nodded in agreement as well. They began to talk about interesting stories from their subsect. Guan listened intently, occasionally laughing genuinely. As dusk approached, Zhen Qin left, while Yilan decided to stay one more night before leaving. Night fell. While watching Guan read, Yilan casually asked, "Brother, what do you think of Miss G?" Guan's gaze remained fixed on the green hero travelogue he was holding as he countered, "Why ask so suddenly?" The atmosphere downstairs had become unnatural again. Ji Xiaoyu was eavesdropping. "Actually, I think you two are quite a match. With her talent, instead of enjoying fame and fortune, she stays in Medicine Valley, which is clearly for you." Yilan spoke softly, her eyes fixed on Guan, seemingly observing any change in his expression. Guan replied, "I know." Upon hearing his answer, Yilan's gaze flickered. Guan looked up at her and said, "Her reasons for staying include me, but there are other reasons as well. In life, especially for a cultivator, there are more important things to pursue, right?" Yilan smiled at his words, saying, "Yeah, in my 40s all I was concerned about was you, enchained by emotions. Now I have more to pursue. Rather than some nominal reputation, what matters more to me is that we are both alive and can keep each other company." She paused, then added, "Actually, I brought her up because I hope you, brother, would seriously consider her feelings. I can't accompany you forever. It's best if you don't cling to the past and keep forming new relationships, whatever those may be. At the very least, this will make you less lonely in the future." Having caught the eye of Sword Venerable Fudao and possessing the primordial reincarnation skill, Yilan believed Gu and would live a very long time, and she was destined to be just a passerby in his life. Rather than claiming possession, she hoped he would live freely in the future. In her view, her brother deserved all the world's beauty. Guin looked at her without offering comfort, instead smiling and asking, "What's wrong with being alone?" "The terrible thing is being perpetually alone. Don't worry, I have many friends, and have you ever seen me feeling down? As for Ji Xiaoyu, she too can't accompany me for long. Don't think about how long you can be with me, but what I can do with you, and for how long." Yilan instinctively wanted to ask what was wrong with Ji Xiaoyu, but she refrained, realizing that if even Guin couldn't solve the problem with Ji Xiaoyu, what could she do? There was no need to spoil her brother's mood. "That's true. I'm just a mortal whose life is blessed by association with you, brother." Yilan covered her mouth and laughed. Her comment seemed jesting, but it was earnest. Without Guin, she would not have her current status and power, and might well have died hundreds of years earlier. Every additional day she lived, she owed a bit more to Guin. At least that's how she saw it. Guin gave her a glaring look and said, "What nonsensical talk. Since when has fate been hierarchical? Meeting you is my good fortune as well." "Really?" Yilan's eyes crinkled with laughter, making her look quite charming. Guin raised his hand, placing on the table with his palm up. Yilan hesitated for a moment, then reached out her hand, which Guin took hold of readily. "Focus on your cultivation. Don't worry about what might be or might not be. I will accompany you on the journey of immortal cultivation. If we don't reach the immortal realm in this lifetime, I will find you in the next. Even if you've forgotten me, it's enough that I remember you." Guin stared into Yilan's eyes, speaking earnestly. Yilan's eyes widened. It was the first time she had heard Guin make such a pledge. "Brother," Yilan said emotionally, her gaze filled with tender affection for Guin Gu, and casually drew out a book, asking, "This is a book I've been working on recently. Want to take a look?" Yilan's attention shifted to the book's cover, and she saw 3 characters. "Dream of the Red Chamber." As autumn was drawing to a close, one day, Guin rode down from the transmission array platform on the back of the Blood Prison Great Saint, with an Exian following by his side. Suddenly, a figure charged over and blocked the way of the Blood Prison Great Saint. It was Long Qing. He looked at Guin with a face full of anger, and in his eyes, there was also a sense of grievance. Guin sat on the Blood Prison Great Saint's back, his gaze lazy, and said, "What do you really want?" An Exian looked at Long Qing and found it amusing but held back her laughter. If it had been before, she might have spoken for Long Qing. However, she had experienced Long Qing's swagger too, feeling that this youngster's temperament indeed needed tempering. "Look how honest and Sheng Tian from Mystic Valley is." Facing Guin's gaze, Long Qing opened his mouth but didn't know how to express his feelings. The Blood Prison Great Saint wouldn't indulge him and said, "Don't get in the way. Someone has already taught you cultivation, yet you still want the master to teach you?" Long Qing's face turned entirely red, and he was at a loss for what to do. After all, Guin had raised him himself, and he didn't make things difficult for him, but said, "In fact, you harbor a starting point that others do not have, and one could even say that you're already strong. It's just that you haven't discovered it yet. Rather than blindly striving to get stronger, what you should do is take a deep breath and understand yourself." From a distance, Shan Xinzi was eavesdropping and pondered upon hearing these words. He had long noticed that Long Qing was no ordinary individual. Without a trace of spiritual power, Long Qing's physical strength and qi blood surged rapidly. In terms of spiritual power, Long Qing was worthless, but when it came to the growth rate of true strength, he was definitely a rare talent in the world. Could it be that Long Qing truly harbored a power, even he hadn't noticed? After hearing Gu An's words, Long Qing was shocked, unable to tell if what Guin said was true or false. An Exian and the Blood Prison Great Saint both looked at Long Qing with astonishment. They wouldn't believe Guin would lie. "Do I really still have potential?" Long Qing couldn't help but ask, his face showing both nervousness and anticipation. Guan dismounted and walked up to Long Qing, resting his right hand on Long Qing's shoulder. Instantly, Long Qing's face turned pale and his body began to tremble. "How does it feel?" Guan asked. Long Qing clenched his teeth and said, "It hurts a bit." It was more than a bit. He felt like his body was about to fall apart, but he couldn't show weakness in front of his master. He was puzzled in his heart and didn't know what his master was doing. Testing him? A smile appeared on Gu An's face. As soon as he smiled, Long Qing's complexion turned deathly pale, and his body trembled even more violently, even his lips quivering. Large beads of cold sweat broke out on his forehead. At that moment, he felt his body no longer belonged to him. He even felt his body had decayed, as he lost sensation, and his mind went blank, devoid of all thoughts. Alexian saw something was amiss with him and took 2 steps forward, but she still restrained her concern. How could the master possibly harm Long Qing? Guan withdrew his hand, and Long Qing immediately collapsed to the ground like a lump of mud. He instinctively looked up at Guan, his eyes filled with fear. Passing disciples gave them curious or puzzled looks, thinking that Guan was disciplining Long Qing, unaware of what offense Long Qing had committed. Guan looked down at Long Qing and asked, "What did you just feel?" Long Qing took deep breaths, struggling to raise his head, and said with an afraid look, "I felt like I was about to die, but you didn't die." Guan stared at him with an indifferent gaze that made him feel afraid, causing him to subconsciously lower his head. Just now, if it were a Mahayana cultivator, they'd have been reduced to ash. Guan left these words behind and then walked past Long Qing. Long Qing widened his eyes and twisted his head to look at Gu An's retreating figure, his expression one of disbelief. An Xian and the Blood Prison Great Saint were also stunned. For an Xian, the Mahayana realm was still a far-off dream, while the Blood Prison Great Saint was itself a Mahayana cultivator. Was this youngster Long Qing already more formidable than a Mahayana cultivator? They both felt it was absurd in their hearts. Shen Xinzi appeared out of thin air in front of Long Qing, crouching down to check his body, his face quickly revealing a look of shock. "Impossible," Shen Xinzi murmured to himself, sensing his worldview collapsing. Long Qing didn't know what his master was thinking. His mind was echoing Gu An's words. If it had been a Mahayana cultivator, they would have been reduced to ash. He recalled the terrifying sensation from before and suddenly felt it may not have been so scary after all. Meanwhile, Gu An's image in his heart soared immensely. Chapter 420. The power of the past, since being informed of his potential by Gu and Long Qing stopped cultivating his physical body. Instead, he began to settle his mind and feel the foundation of his own being. Shinxinzi had no objections to this. Shinxinzi felt that he was not worthy to teach Long Qing. He appeared calm on the outside, but was very lost at heart. Having stayed in the Third Medicine Valley for hundreds of years, he had seen through nothing and learned nothing. Autumn gave way to winter. Snow fell from the sky, plunging the great heaven and earth into an expanse of whiteness. That day, after the morning exercises were over, Guan stood by the wooden rail, admiring the snowscape. The snowflakes landing on his body turned into mist, swirling around him. His eyes were fixed on the garden, but his divine thought was cast towards outer heaven. An anomaly had appeared in the reincarnation vortex. After Gu An's breakthrough, the reincarnation rules within the vortex had been constantly changing. He couldn't tell whether it was because of him or simply a coincidence. It was likely due to his traveling back and forth through the reincarnation vortex. He had caused a great upheaval in a universe's path, which in turn affected the reincarnation vortex. He wasn't worried, though. Even the greatest anomaly in the reincarnation vortex would hardly pose a threat to the Xian Yuan's Zaician. He speculated that beings from other universes would come to the great heavenly spirit land, which was undoubtedly a disaster for the great heaven and earth. While he was contemplating, an Xian arrived at his side. She mentioned Long Qing. The boy had been sitting still under the mystic pure tree for a month, and she was afraid he might go mad. "It's fine, it's not been that long. Sometimes it's good to think things through," Guin said casually. Longqing was born in the Nirvana realm. Guin had merely sealed his cultivation level. Now, it seemed that Longqing was rapidly growing stronger when, in fact, he was merely recovering his original strength. After hearing this, an Exian couldn't help but ask, "Master, how high is his potential? Really? How does it compare to my senior and junior brothers?" Guin replied, "In terms of innate talent, he is stronger, but your senior brother has a sharper intuition." In Guin's eyes, what was truly terrifying about and how was his intuition. Not only did he cultivate quickly, but he also had an astonishing understanding of spells and divine skills. He had been imprisoned by the Immortal dynasty, but had not delayed his cultivation at all, and he was not far from reaching the Nirvana realm. He even anticipated the commotion and how it would cause in the Immortal dynasty once he reached the Nirvana realm and looked forward to it. That amazing! An Exian widened her eyes in astonishment. Even on the platform, there was a heaven and earth flying immortal who concealed his cultivation and appeared very ordinary, unable to draw attention, at least on the heavenly repair platform. Zhuo Yijian stood steadfast beside the heaven-cutting axe, straight as a rod. Like a faithful devotee, he had not brought any benefit to Guin, but his dedication and perseverance moved him. After all, the stronger Zhuo Yijian became, the more he underscored the might of the sword Venerable Fudao. Guin stepped onto the heavenly repair platform, making his way through the crowd towards the heaven-cutting axe. Even on the platform, Guin would encounter acquaintances, necessitating some small talk. By the time he reached the heaven-cutting axe, half an incense stick's time had passed. Zhuo Yijian saw Guin and smiled, a rare sight on his stern face. He greeted Guin proactively, asking, "What brings you here today?" Guin replied, "I've been to the book collection hall." Zhuo Yijian's eyes lit up as he asked, "Could it be a new book?" He knew that Guin was the author of Investiture of the Gods, of which he was a dedicated reader. It was the work he read the most, but he also greatly enjoyed Journey to the West and Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Guin did not conceal anything and nodded in response, which thrilled Zhuo Yijian. At that moment, a cultivator who had been trying to pull out the heaven-cutting axe failed. He released his grip, stepped back 3 paces, and remarked with emotion, "The legacy of Sword Venerable Fudao truly is not easy to obtain. Even I, a wandering immortal, could not succeed." Wandering immortal. A stir went through the crowd, and someone complained in a low voice, "Can this legacy really be obtained by someone?" As soon as these words were spoken, he faced criticism from those around him. Couldn't you feel the sword intent of Sword Venerable Fudao when you're on the platform? That's right. Even if you can't obtain Sword Venerable Fudao's legacy, at least you can experience his sword intent, which is a great honor. Sword Venerable Fudao is so formidable. If his legacy were obtained within a few hundred years, it wouldn't seem as precious. That just means the fated person hasn't arrived yet. I really look forward to that day. When it comes, the commotion caused by the heaven-cutting axe will surely shake heaven and earth. Guin listened to the discussions around him and reflected inwardly. Was he being too harsh? Without speaking of someone's talent, to pull up the heaven-cutting axe, one must at least possess the cultivation level of a free immortal. Due to the appearance of the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, Guin had quietly strengthened the mana within the heaven-cutting axe, so none but a free immortal could shake the heaven-cutting axe. He had originally planned to ease the conditions when the destined one arrived, but as it stood, finding someone who met his criteria seemed difficult. Never mind, it was just as well if no one obtained it. A legacy that stands for 10,000 years, a million years, that would become legend, embodying even deeper foundations. Do you want to give it a try? Is what Yijian asked Guin. In the meantime, someone else approached and grabbed the axe handle of the heaven-cutting axe. But just like the person before, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't move the heaven-cutting axe one bit. Most people who came to the Heavenly Repair platform were there to feel the power of Sword Venerable Fudao, and even if they failed, they had no regrets. As such, those who failed to obtain the legacy left with excitement. Forget it, what I really want to ask is, what are you seeking by staying here so long? Guan looked at Zhuo Yijian and asked with a smile on his face, as if making small talk. After hearing the question, Zhuo Yijian shook his head and said, "What can I seek? Being here allows me to comprehend the Sword Dao, and I'm already content." "Sword Dao, huh?" Guan murmured, then cupped his hands and turned to leave. Zhuo Yijian saw Guan walk away in confusion and was about to speak when, boom! A majestic sword intent rose from beneath his feet, engulfing his entire body and lifting his robes upwards, fluttering as if they would burst at any moment. Zhuo Yijian's face changed dramatically, his eyes filled with surprise and joy. His gaze followed Guan, who was walking away with his back toward him. All around, there was a sound of astonishment as everyone watched him in shock. Only Guan, turning his back on the crowd and not turning around, seemed out of place, as if he were in another dimension. Could it be? Zhuo Yijian's eyes widened. Guan had just inquired about his aspirations, and now he had received the sword intent of Sword Venerable Fudao. It couldn't be a coincidence. At that moment, Zhuo Yijian felt a familiar sword intent emanating from Guan. The sword intent of Sword Venerable Fudao, and it was even stronger than his own. It could only be. Zhuo Yijian was shocked and excited. He felt no anger at being deceived by a junior. Instead, he was pleasantly surprised. Because he liked Investiture of the Gods, he had always held a wonderful fantasy about Panin, and he had been saddened for a long time upon learning that Guan was Panin. Now, knowing Panin was Sword Venerable Fudao, how could he not be thrilled? He didn't believe Guan was a few hundred years old. He must be some old monster in disguise. The thought of how well he had treated Guan over the years filled him with a sense of excitement. Perhaps he had the chance to take Sword Venerable Fudao as his master. As he watched Guan walk in the opposite direction of the crowd, Zhuo Yijian was filled with infinite longing. Such capability, yet content to cultivate here. What an extraordinary state of mind. The cultivators from all sides marveled at Zhuo Yijian's fortune, as the vast sword intent of Sword Venerable Fudao was directed only at him, clearly a reward. More and more disciples of the Supreme Sect appeared, as if from nowhere, gathering atop the Heavenly Repair platform. They saw Zhuo Yijian enveloped in sword intent and couldn't help but feel delighted. Whoever received the guidance of Sword Venerable Fudao was a treasured asset for the Supreme Sect, and as a community of shared interests, how could they not rejoice? Rumbling, a suppressive roar echoed through the sky, causing all the creatures of heaven and earth to look up, but the cultivators on the Heavenly Repair platform were not concerned, assuming it was an anomaly caused by the sword intent of Sword Venerable Fudao. Walking through the crowd, Guan paused and looked up, his brow lifting. Is this power from the past? Guan thought curiously. His divine thought pierced through the sky, peering into the reincarnation vortex beyond. A powerful entity was descending, one that could directly threaten the safety of the great heavenly spirit land. Chapter 421. Primordial Immortal King. As the cultivator on the Heavenly Repair platform marveled at Zhuo Yijian's fortune, the Supreme Sect sensed something amiss, for the oppressive might enveloping the heavens, and the earth grew stronger. The snow filling the sky was becoming sparse, as if the harsh winter was about to end. In the Third Medicine Valley, Shun Xinzi, sitting under a tree, looked up with furrowed brows, beginning to calculate by counting on his fingers. Ji Xiaoyu stepped out from the house, looking up at the snowy heavens, her eyes reflecting the figure of a majestic stature. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared out of nowhere beside her, his expression solemn, and said, "The breath of an immortal king." Ji Xiaoyu turned to look at him, asking, "What is an immortal king?" She had regained many memories from her past life, but there were always gaps. Hence, she could maintain the will of this life. An immortal king is a free immortal who has gathered the chief fortune of heaven and earth in oneself, having undergone reincarnation tribulation. Their mana is said to penetrate the heavens and be unmeasurable, said the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, looking up with a serious expression on his face. He continued, "The aura of this immortal king is off. There's a strong scent of death." "What does that mean?" Ji Xiaoyu asked, her brows knitted. "I'm not sure, but one thing is certain. The great heavenly spirit land is facing a great disaster." The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor took a deep breath, his eyes flickering, seemingly deep in thought. After hearing this, Ji Xiaoyu shifted her gaze back to the sky, observing the strange phenomena above. The snow melted, the clouds churned, and the sky gradually darkened, the oppressive atmosphere between heaven and earth intensifying, making more and more beings feel uneasy. Guan watched for a while, then walked toward the edge of the heavenly repair platform. Zhui Yijian was still absorbing the sword intent refinement from Sword Venerable Fudao, his thoughts being drawn into a state of path enlightenment, forgetting about external matters. When Guan descended from the heavenly repair platform, the disciples of the Outer Gate City finally noticed the anomalies in the sky. At the same time, in outer heaven, in the void, figures knelt, facing the reincarnation vortex, which had grown larger than ever, with a majestic figure radiating light appearing faintly visible in the darkness at the center of the vortex. Before this figure, all the powerful figures under the reincarnation vortex seemed insignificant. The cultivators from the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court who rushed here changed their expressions drastically at the sight of the figure in the reincarnation vortex. "What is that? Such a terrifying aura. How high must his cultivation level be?" In terms of top-tier strength, the Holy Court was now completely outclassed by the Immortal Dynasty. How could they not feel alarmed? Over the years, although the Holy Court had withstood the onslaughts of the Immortal Dynasty, anyone with clear sight could see that the Holy Court could not turn the tide and decisively defeat the Immortal Dynasty within a short period. Now, with the emergence of the primordial Immortal King, what would happen next was foreseeable. The Holy Minister, with a stern face, said, "What strategies do you propose, my lords?" Upon hearing this, the holy gods suddenly fell silent. Facing a free immortal, any plan was meaningless. Only a free immortal could confront another free immortal. One of the holy gods looked at the Holy Minister and asked, "When will you begin your breakthrough?" The Holy Minister had been preparing to break through to a free immortal status, but such a matter could not be rushed. It required ample preparation, and for the Holy Minister, this tribulation crossing was a life-or-death challenge, naturally not to be undertaken lightly. The Holy Minister looked at him and said, "If not for some people shirking their responsibilities, I might have already succeeded in my tribulation crossing. We are all contributing to the Holy Court. I don't know why some clutch onto their chief fortune so tightly, either in seclusion, unable to act rashly, or having just released it, unable to retrieve it immediately." He wanted to leverage the entire chief fortune of the Holy Court for his breakthrough. But once chief fortune was linked with a person, it could not be withdrawn easily. Losing chief fortune would disturb the mind and bring ominous luck. This could not be forced. It must be discussed thoroughly with the higher and lower echelons of the Holy Court to draw out some of the chief fortune without causing the collapse of the Holy Court. Moreover, the Holy Court was still contending with the Immortal Dynasty. Faced with the Holy Minister's interrogation, that holy god turned pale and did not make a sound. Another holy god spoke up. "It's too late even for the Holy Minister to make a breakthrough now. What we need is a free immortal who can join the fight immediately." An old man with a wooden staff stroked his beard and asked, "Are you referring to Sword Venerable Fudao?" Silence descended upon the great hall, the holy gods then turning their gaze towards the Holy Minister, causing him to furrow his brow. The Holy Minister cursed inwardly. If Sword Venerable Fu Dao had been so easy to convince, he would have joined the holy court long ago. Knowing that Sword Venerable Fu Dao might possess the cultivation of a free immortal, while the holy minister was pleased and relieved, he was also wary. A free immortal who would not reveal his true identity, who wouldn't rethink their assumptions. The primordial immortal king raised his right hand, and the great heavenly spirit land trembled slightly. The sea of clouds churned, as a patch of ocean suddenly exploded, with terrifying waves shooting up to the sky. A mysterious black object like a mountain surged from the seabed, scattering the clouds and swiftly flying towards the primordial immortal king. Boom! The primordial immortal king caught the incoming object with his right hand. A massive black saber with a handle as long as a mountain ridge, carved with mysterious patterns. The blade thick, seemingly unsharpened, completely black, emanating no aura. Viewed from this position toward the great heavenly spirit land, in the direction from which the black saber had come, the sea of clouds was spreading open to reveal a massive hole. Beneath the hole, a blue expanse was faintly visible, a crack appearing and widening. The gaze of the primordial immortal king fell upon the black saber in his hand, and he murmured to himself, "It's been a long time since I held you. I truly miss the days we fought side by side." Chapter 422, Giving You a Chance with a Knife_2, he lifted the black broadsword and swung it gently, stirring up the mana that shook the outer layers of the sky, and also caused the reincarnation vortex behind him to twist and ripple. This spectacle made the figures within the reincarnation even more excited, continuously shouting the name of the immortal king. There was a tumult in the sky, while the great heaven and earth was dead silent, as if all living beings were afraid of disturbing them. No one dared to come out, and even less dared to shout. The primordial immortal king raised the black broadsword high, completely releasing his own momentum. It was the momentum of someone standing at the pinnacle of the 9 heavens of the immortal path. Even the Yangxian emperor had never shown such momentum. Far away in the immortal dynasty, the Yangxian emperor stood atop the golden palace, gazing up at this scene, while the ancient immortal emperor appeared out of nowhere beside him, his face ashen. "Was this also part of your plan?" the ancient immortal emperor asked in a deep voice. The Yangxian emperor, with an expressionless face, countered, "Would I resurrect another emperor of the immortal dynasty to replace myself?" After hearing this, the ancient immortal emperor furrowed his brows and asked in astonishment, "Then, who could it be?" The Yangxian emperor said softly, "It seems that Yuan Shu ancestor had another reason for opening reincarnation, and perhaps this was all part of the primordial immortal king's calculations." The immortal dynasty and the holy court were in turmoil, creating chaos in the heavenly secrets. His resurrection now might not be impossible. Upon hearing this, the ancient immortal emperor's eyes showed a hint of worry. The momentum of the primordial immortal king was indeed too strong, so powerful that even he, as a free immortal, felt a chill in his heart. How could he not worry? The most critical point was that following the resurrection of the primordial immortal king, it was not the holy court but their immortal dynasty's immortal spirits who were the first to suffer. This was a very dangerous signal. Could it be a plot by the holy court? But that shouldn't be. How could they achieve such a feat? The ancient immortal emperor muttered to himself. The Yangxian emperor did not reply, but in his eyes there was no sign of worry. Instead, there was a will to fight. Ever since he took the throne of the immortal dynasty, people have often compared him to previous immortal emperors, with the primordial immortal king, the founder of the immortal dynasty, being an existence he could never surpass. He had more than once imagined, if he and the primordial immortal king existed in the same era, who would have a last laugh? He was full of confidence in himself. Even when facing the long, unbeatable Xingtian, he was confident, for he was much younger than Xingtian. Even though the primordial immortal king's current momentum was strong, the Yangxian emperor did not fear, his heart burning with fighting spirit. On another side, the holy court, currently discussing strategies. The holy ministers and holy gods were astonished that the primordial immortal king had actually annihilated that group of immortal spirits. What was going on? One of the holy gods looked towards the holy minister and couldn't help but ask, "Was this your arrangement?" The holy minister looked towards the sky, shook his head slightly, and said, "It has nothing to do with me. I fear that changes are about to arise." Upon hearing this, the holy gods became even more puzzled. They did not feel the delight, but rather a sense of unease. Who, after all, was behind all this? In front of the reincarnation vortex, after the primordial immortal king felt the power of the black broadsword, his left hand reached towards his head. There is still something missing. The primordial immortal king muttered to himself, his gaze following to the great heavenly spirit land, his eyes fixing there, the corners of his mouth lifting, and then he vanished into thin air. The supreme sect within the outer gate city. Guan was listening with great interest, with the information obtained from Dixie's mouth. The supreme sect had indeed become powerful, even extending a vast network of relationships overseas. It all revolved around one person, Sword Venerable Fudao. Overseas powers, out of respect for Sword Venerable Fudao, responded very enthusiastically to the Supreme Sect's attempts at forging alliances, especially after Sword Venerable Fudao took action. This enthusiasm rose to a whole new level. Dixie was about to recount last year's battle on Golden Scorpion Island, where the Supreme Sect had established no small reputation, proving that, even without Sword Venerable Fudao's intervention, their strength was formidable. Boom! A figure descended from the sky, crashing down onto the street behind Guan, sending stones flying, and cultivators nearby were blown away. Guan's robe, too, was fluttered by the blast. Dixie's pupils suddenly dilated. He immediately flashed behind Guan, shielding him. But the next second, he regretted it because he saw the true face of the Comer. It was the primordial immortal king. The roaring figure of the primordial immortal king was still imprinted in the sky, and the surrounding cultivators instinctively looked up and then back at the primordial immortal king. Whoosh! The cultivators scattered like a receding tide, with some even leaping up, flying towards the distance. Dixie, however, stood rooted to the spot, his legs as if they were filled with lead, unable to move. He was afraid, but for some unfathomable reason, he did not run away. All he could hear were his heartbeat. The fact that they chose not to flee already showcased their utmost courage. Kneel! The primordial immortal king's gaze turned stern, his voice thunderous like a roaring explosion, startling everyone to tremble. Dixie turned pale with fright, his legs went weak, and he collapsed. But just as his knees were about to touch the ground, a hand from behind grabbed his arm, pulling him back up. It was Guan. While holding Dixie, Guan looked towards the primordial immortal king. The nine-fingered divine lord, perched on a rooftop afar, was secretly shocked. Who in the world was this kid? Having a vivid memory of Guan's recent standoff with the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, he became curious about Guan, though he dared not inquire. Dixie, gripped by Guan, inexplicably felt a sense of relief wash over him. He turned to look at Guan, wanting to say something, but upon seeing Guan's stern face, he found himself speechless. He was overwhelmed by Guan's demeanor. He couldn't help but feel an involuntary awe in his heart. The primordial immortal king looked at Guan, his eyes flashing with a strange light. He raised the black great sword in his hand, holding it high above his head, ready to strike. Gu and be careful. A supreme sect disciple shouted out loud. Having once been a disciple of the Third Medicine Valley, and forever grateful to Guan seeing Guan in danger, he instinctively warned him. That was all he could do. Guan slightly tilted his head, staring at the primordial immortal king, and said, "They'll give you one chance to strike, just one." Upon hearing this, a chill shot through the primordial immortal king's eyes. He twisted his wrist and savagely brought the sword down. Half kneeling, Dcia looked up, his eyes obscured by the black sword, his face filled with despair. Boom! The sword struck down. The black greatsword instantly dissipated, and along with the primordial immortal king, it turned into ash. The terrifying surge of energy crushed the surrounding buildings, and even the clouds in the sky scattered. Guin stood his ground, expression unchanged. Only his hair and robes fluttered ceaselessly, as if fierce flames were raging around him. Chapter 423. I am Sword Venerable Fudao. With the primordial immortal king turning to dust, the whole world seemed to suddenly quiet down. Supreme Sex cultivators were all left staring at Guin, their eyes brimming with shock, while Dcia, standing before Guin, was dumbfounded, his body rigid. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Shun Shinzi were also as still as wooden chickens, unable to believe their own eyes. Guin's face was expressionless, and there was a slight sense of regret in his heart. Could even a powerful, free, immortal not break through his protecting Tao divine essence? He did not strike back just now. The primordial immortal king was destroyed by his own power and the protecting Tao divine essence, both body and soul, completely obliterated. Regrettably, since the primordial immortal king was not a living being, Guin was unable to seize any lifespan. More and more figures appeared out of thin air, all of them great cultivators from the Supreme Sect. Looking at the street where Guin was standing, they all frowned as the strong presence of the primordial immortal king still lingered in the air. Looking at the mess on the street, they couldn't help imagining the recent tumult. Guin raised his right hand. Streaks of black air appeared out of nowhere, burrowing into the center of his palm. He then casually put his hand into his sleeve, and nobody saw what it truly was. He looked down at Dcia and asked, "Brother D, are you all right?" Dcia came back to his senses. With Guin's help, he shakily stood up. Looking at Guin, all was difficult to hide in his eyes. Dcia's lips quivered as he wanted to ask about Guin's identity, but feared giving offense. Sword Venerable Fudao. A cry of shock came from afar. As the words were spoken, the quiet was broken, and noise rose from all around, rapidly turning into an uproar. Dcia also guessed this. The primordial immortal king claimed to possess the 9 heavens of immortal path cultivation level. Who else could slay an entity with such mastery within the Supreme Sect, if not Sword Venerable Fudao? He turned out to be Sword Venerable Fudao. Dcia looked at Guin, whose smile was mild. His Taoist heart could not calm down. Recalling the years of interaction with Guin, he felt ashamed and frightened. Thankfully, he had never looked down on Guin, as he had never been disrespectful in their exchanges. Guin couldn't hear his inner voice, but could probably guess it. For Guin, it was just amusing. There was no feeling of being slapped in the face. He always enjoyed socializing and never demanded too much. A smile from others was already nice. There was no need to ask for more. Is he Sword Venerable Fudao? No, it's more likely that Sword Venerable Fudao protected him. Indeed, we didn't see him take action. It must have been Sword Venerable Fudao who acted. That man is Guin, the Valley Master of the Third Medicine Valley. Go, chess, and Gamoku were all invented by him. I know him. He definitely isn't Sword Venerable Fudao. I've also known him for hundreds of years. He is extremely kind-hearted. Perhaps he has met Sword Venerable Fudao, who is incognito, so Sword Venerable Fudao came to his aid. I wonder if that guy just now is dead. As more and more disciples began to talk, the tone quickly changed. With the voices of people familiar with Gu and speaking up, many believed that it was Sword Venerable Fudao who had protected Guin, not that he was Sword Venerable Fudao himself. Of course, some still thought that Guin was Sword Venerable Fudao, because he was too composed in the face of the primordial immortal king. Even if he was not Sword Venerable Fu Dao, he must have a close relationship with him. Otherwise, he could not be so fearless. LV Baitian, Ji Han Tian, Gu Zong, and other high-ranking members also appeared one after another. Upon seeing Guin, LV Baitian breathed a sigh of relief. He gave Ji Han Tian an instruction and then appeared beside Guin. "Let's talk somewhere else," LV Baitian said in a low voice, glancing at Xie with a look full of mystery. Guin nodded slightly, then followed LV Baitian away. As Xie watched Guin's retreating figure, he was about to speak when two figures appeared out of nowhere in front of him. "Come with us," one of them said coldly. The oppressive feeling of the immortal path realm enveloped Xie, leaving him no choice but to comply. The street was quickly sealed off, the spectators were dispersed, the celestial phenomenon above and the remaining clouds gradually disappeared, and the snow continued to fall. Streams of shooting stars lit up the sky, figures emerging from the reincarnation vortex. They were descending into the great heavenly spirit land everywhere. "Is it over? What happened?" the ancient immortal emperor asked, furrowing his brows, still alone with the Yangxian emperor in the great hall. Yangxian emperor also sensed that the presence of the primordial immortal king had abruptly ceased. He pondered and said, "Probably Sword Venerable Fu Dao made a move." The place of the primordial immortal king's descent, Yangxian emperor would not forget. That was a place that brought shame to the immortal dynasty. Slain by Sword Venerable Fu Dao, a powerful heavenly spirit, the immortal dynasty dared not seek revenge, a situation that naturally caused extreme dissatisfaction within its ranks, towards the higher-ups, and towards Yangxian emperor. Although Yangxian emperor was wary of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, he did not expect Sword Venerable Fu Dao to cause the momentum of the primordial immortal king to vanish so quickly. Taitsong continent. What exactly happened there? Yangxian emperor suddenly wanted to take a trip there. At this moment, not only he but even the holy minister of the holy court wished to visit the supreme sect. Such a domineering, primordial immortal king. It was not likely that he would have subdued his presence upon arrival. It was highly possible he had been suppressed. Sword Venerable Fu Dao, who exactly are you, a sacred being, and what is the purpose of hiding your identity? The holy minister sat on his sacred chair, his gaze deep in thought. The holy gods in the hall were also discussing the matter. The sudden disappearance of the aura of the primordial immortal king made them uneasy, regardless of the outcome. An hour later, Guin leisurely returned to the third Medicine Valley. Just as he got back, he was surrounded by a throng of disciples. News about what had happened in the outer gate city spread rapidly. Guin's name and that of Sword Venerable Fu Dao were widely circulated, though stories varied. However, one thing was certain: Guin was very likely related to Sword Venerable Fu Dao. The disciples had heard before that their master's cultivation level was extraordinary. Now hearing this, how could they not be excited? Facing their inquiries, Guin said helplessly, "I must confess, I am Sword Venerable Fu Dao. I have always interacted with you in the guise of an ordinary valley master of Medicine Valley. But in return, you have not shown enough reverence for me. This intervention was unexpected." As soon as these words were uttered, they immediately provoked exclamations from the disciples. Yu Ying in the crowd couldn't help but snort. What an act! She also harbored doubts in her heart. Previously, Shun Xinzi had wanted to kill her, but then suddenly stopped. Could it be related to Guin? Is Guin truly Sword Venerable Fu Dao? That should not be the case. She had heard from Xian Tianyi about his life story, and he was just over 700 years old now. At such an age, how could he be Sword Venerable Fu Dao? His flippant tone made it impossible for her to speculate wildly. Not just her, the other disciples also felt that way, always feeling that Guin seemed to be joking. Guin did not elaborate further, letting them guess. Was it true or false? Letting a bit of suspense remain in life was rather interesting. It's worth mentioning that previously, LV Baitian had assured him that he would find a way to suppress this incident. LV Batian thought that Gu An's intervention was to protect the supreme sect. Of course, he had more reasons hidden in his heart. He feared the exposure of Sword Venerable Fudeo's true identity, which was also the thought of the supreme sect's core leadership. If other powers learned of Sword Venerable Fudeo's true identity, that would not be good. They were not afraid of Sword Venerable Fudao getting into trouble, but rather someone enticing him away. The Holy Court was the best example. Guan freed himself from the disciples' entanglement and went to his own loft, and then was properly blocked by Ji Xiaoyu. Was that commotion caused by you? Ji Xiaoyu asked. Guan shook his head and said, somebody fell from the sky, wanted to steal my crown. He was about to chop at me. Then suddenly he vanished. As he spoke, he patted his chest, showing a scared expression. Ji Xiaoyu, pensive, couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity with Gu An's description. Seeing her distracted, Guan didn't continue talking and entered alone. When Guan closed the door, Ji Xiaoyu was startled awake. She turned her head to look at the second-floor door, her eyes filled with disbelief. Could it be the Heaven and Earth Path Gang? Even so, to think of extinguishing such an existence. Ji Xiaoyu was filled with shock, Guan becoming incredibly mysterious in her mind. As time passed, the incident at the Outer Gate City quickly spread, and even with the efforts of the Supreme Sect to suppress it, the name couldn't be stopped. Various powers heard of one name. Guan. After returning to his room, Guan took up the Green Hero Travelogue. He could feel that the followers of the primordial immortal king had all descended to the mortal world, and they were going to bring disaster. He had no interventionist ideas, because this disaster would cause the immortal dynasty and the Holy Court to temporarily cease hostilities, which was actually a good thing. The immortal dynasty and Holy Court's war affected even more creatures. Moreover, with Gu An's current insight into the laws of fate and karma, he could see farther calamities. No matter how he intervened, the fate of the great heavenly spirit land would never disappear permanently. There is birth and death, fortune and misfortune. These are the laws of all things in great heaven and earth. After the extinguishing of the primordial immortal king, the winter snow fell even heavier. In the following days, more and more people came to the Third Medicine Valley for go games and visits to see Gu and didn't meet with strangers. He continued to linger in his various medicine valleys, harvesting medicinal herbs. When he went to the Ninshu cave, Tian Yaoer and the other two girls inquired about the roaring of the primordial immortal king. He comforted them briefly and then began to give them guidance in their cultivation. Life was quite busy. Apart from picking medicinal herbs, Guan also had to teach Tian Yaoer, Tian Qing, Tian Bai, and an Xian. Aside from that, he had to take time to cultivate and nurture his body. In the blink of an eye, the Spring Festival arrived. On the morning of the Spring Festival, Guan made a trip to the intersect city, drinking with Wu Ju at an inn while listening to a storyteller talk about overseas matters. That immortal Lord Qin is said to be an ancient great power from 10 million years ago, resurrected from reincarnation, needing to devour the souls of countless immortal cultivators to reconstruct his body. The storyteller's tone was filled with emotional provocation. Even Guan and Wu Ju were captivated by his words. Chapter 424. Giving face to seniors over 6 million years old, a free immortal. A lifespan of 50 million years. The ultimate lifespan of 100 million years. Truly worthy of being the current lord of the immortal dynasty. Guan looked at Yang Xian Emperor and felt deeply moved as these numbers demonstrated the emperor's formidable power. Wu Ju continued to refer to himself as the Yang Xian Emperor, oblivious to the true Yang Xian Emperor approaching. The Yang Xian Emperor, dressed in a purple robe with a handsome face, exuded a transcendent aura, even without donning the golden robe and crown of an immortal emperor. His eyes were particularly bright and piercing, his brows hardly concealing his pride. The arrogance, nurtured over millions of years, made him unforgettable at a glance. The Yongxian Emperor did not glance around the second floor, his gaze fixed directly on Guan. He walked towards Guan, reaching Wu Ju's side, and upon hearing the name Yongxian Emperor mentioned, he remained unperturbed. Looking at Guan, he extended his hand in greeting and said, "Daoist friend, may I sit and chat with you?" Guan glanced at him and nodded slightly, following which the Yongxian Emperor sat down. Wu Ju observed the Yongxian Emperor, sensing an extraordinary poise in him. "Do you know each other?" Wu Ju curiously asked, aware of Guan's strong networking skills and friendships across the Supreme Sect, which he greatly admired. Before displaying his talent, he had not one friend. Guan replied, "We do not know each other, but to meet is fate, is it not?" Upon hearing this, the Yongxian Emperor smiled and nodded in agreement. Guan waved his right hand, and a jug of wine rose up, settling gently in front of the Yongxian Emperor. "Drink this jug of wine, and see if you would like to be friends with us," Guan said nonchalantly. Previously, when Qiushi Immortal Lord had come to trouble him, even if not arranged by the Yongxian Emperor, as the Lord of the Immortal Dynasty, he couldn't disassociate from the causal relations. The Yongxian Emperor narrowed his eyes upon hearing this. Naturally, he wasn't going to drink the wine, but Guan's intention was to constrain him. Facing Guan, he could only discern that Guan's cultivation level was in the nascent soul realm, unable to spot any loopholes. If Guan truly was Sword Venerable Fu Dao, their gap in cultivation level was undoubtedly enormous. He hesitated for a moment before opening the jug and lifting it, beginning to drink heartily. Wu Ju looked skeptically between Guan and the Yongxian Emperor, witnessing for the first time Guan and putting someone in a difficult position. Who is this person? Could he be a scion of a family that had offended Guan? The Yongxian Emperor drank swiftly, and once he set down the jug, Guan picked up a new one and began drinking alone. Divine thought, true immortal. Reincarnation, tribulation, aura. Immortals with strong chi blood and not a trace of spiritual power. He even saw 2 reincarnated heavenly demons. Something was off about this valley. The third Medicine Valley was festively decorated. Even Ji Xiaoyu and the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, who rarely shunned cultivation, were playing chess with disciples everywhere. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor turned his head toward Guan. His pupils contracted sharply on seeing Yongxian Emperor. His first instinct was to flee, but then remembering Guan's strength, he reassured himself. Guan would protect him. There was no need to be afraid here. Would Yongxian Emperor dare oppose Sword Venerable Fu Dao? That day, the aura of the primordial immortal king was overwhelmingly strong, yet he was reduced to ashes before Sword Venerable Fu Dao. From that day on, Guan was regarded by the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor as the most powerful being in the great heavenly spirit land. He even suspected Guan was Shangtian. Apart from Shangtian, who else in the great heavenly spirit land could be so powerful? The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor diverted his gaze and continued to play chess with the 9-fingered Divine Lord, who was visibly upset and indecisive in his moves. Guan walked further into Medicine Valley, introducing the situation of the third Medicine Valley to Yongxian Emperor. Yongxian Emperor grew interested in the third Medicine Valley. Subsequently, Guan asked Longqing to entertain Yongxian Emperor. He had himself to meet Shenzhen. Shenzhen was messing around in his bookshelf again. Ever since learning about Guan's strength, Longqing had taken very seriously any tasks given by Guan. This was his chance to perform. He was very enthusiastic with Yongxian Emperor, who found him quite interesting as well. Not sure why, Yongxian Emperor felt that Longqing seemed familiar, as if he had met him in a previous life. He guessed that he might have encountered Longqing's past life. However, this was Sword Venerable Fu Dao's territory, and Longqing addressed him as master, so Yongxian Emperor wouldn't dare act recklessly. As dusk approached, all disciples gathered in the loft area. Some sat drinking, others stood arm in arm, and yet others were sparring to enhance the festive mood, keeping the atmosphere lively. Yangxian Emperor's attention was on Guan. He saw Guan surrounded by Shan Zhen, Zhen Xin, Yilan, Ji Xiaoyu, and an Exine, with Shun Zhen and Zhen Xin directly beside him, sparring verbally. Zhen Xin was nearly putting her feet on the table. This gave Yangxian Emperor a deeper understanding of Sword Venerable Fu Dao. This man truly was a hidden hermit. Yilan watched Zhen Xin verbally sparring with Shun Zhen, a smile on her face. Not that she found Zhen Xin's actions appropriate. She simply enjoyed the atmosphere. It was different from the subsect where people revered her, making her feel as though she had returned to Mystic Valley 700 years ago. After so many years, how could recalling the original intentions not be wonderful? Ji Xiaoyu watched Gu intently. He could see the displeasure in her eyes. What would he do? Everyone insisted on coming to Third Medicine Valley to celebrate the festival with him. It was unstoppable. At least Jiang Xiong was better. Waiting for him in the 8 scenic caves, how good it was to interact privately. More crowds always lead to trouble. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.